time in 5 years, at a time of growing trade tensions, with the EU investigating several Chinese industries, including electric vehicle exports, while Beijing is probing mostly French-made imports of brandy. In the opening remarks, Emmanuel Macron told his guest Xi that Europe's future depended on having a balanced relationship with Beijing.
May I suggest we first address Euro-Chinese relations, which will allow us to discuss commercial issues, market access, fair competition conditions, investment, harmonious development, and then we will discuss Ukraine and the Middle East. Two major crises on which coordination between us is absolutely decisive.
The top story at 3 o'clock, the ANC has officially communicated to former party president Jacob Zuma that his disciplinary committee hearing has been postponed. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makgademele.
And coming up in your sports this hour, we hear from Manny Lebak, who credits unity in the Springboks team after SA award win and silver for South Africa at World Relays, while Sinner, a big doubt for French Open. More details at 3:30.
The University Registrar and Secretary to Convocation, Dr. Joel Baloy, cordially invites all members of the University of Venda Convocation to attend the AGM on Saturday, 11 May 2024 in Polokwane, Meropa Hotel at 10:30. The AGM will consider the Vice-Chancellor State of Campus report, the President of Convocation report, and amendments to the Constitution of the Convocation. To RSVP and confirm attendance, please visit www.univen.ac.za/announcements or contact Mr. Mashuda Ramarebo on 060-906-1902.
And we will buy 500 cars and we will buy 500 more. Just to be the one who buys your car, will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Now, I watched a news clip of a lady, an elder, a gogo, right, at Diepkloof in a home there over the weekend, and she was being visited by Kgalema Motlanthe. So, he's an ANC elder. And the lady said this to him in this house-to-house visit. You had no direction. Even if you made mistakes, you don't correct them. Instead, you're busy fighting among yourselves. You don't work like that. And that's what she said. And Motlante's response, he cupped his hands together in gratitude, as he would normally do. He said something like, "That's right, yeah. You gave us marching orders." And there was a moment of humility and humor and a bit of a giggle as well amongst the seriousness. Now, we know that Motlanthe is not just anybody. He was the former caretaker president of South Africa, standing in that period when Thabo Mbeki was recalled and Zuma took over. He then also stood against Zuma for the ANC presidency. And then at one stage he said the ANC needed to lose an election to be able to come back and reform the way it should. Now he's campaigning for the ANC. So what's the big lesson in what I've just told you? It's this, all parties, the ANC and the others, they need to learn from that plea from the elder, from the gogo, from Diepkloof. And here's the story, their world is only as far as they can see. Maybe your world is Japan because you have the connection of the internet and even further, and even the moon or Mars. That's your connection. But for many people, their world, as far as they can see, is only their community, and that's it, right? And therefore, when it comes to election time, it's not the campaigns, it's not the manifestos, it's not the advert, it's not the T-shirts, it's not the cap, it's not the songs, it's not the rallies that impacts people like her. It's what she can see and feel and touch her community and her life. So what do people want? They want to be able to live in a country that allows them to express themselves to reach their fullest potential, right? To see their dreams come true. So when an elder reflects on 30 years and not experience a better life, what does she do? And political parties, all political parties, well, their success has to be measured by the measured, and this is the key word, the measured improvement in the life of all its citizens, like the Gogo. So my message, therefore, not just to the ANC, but in fact to all the parties, is this. If you are not able to improve the measured lives of all people, then you are not in service to the people. And therefore, ahead of South Africa's elections of 2024, here's a question. Are you a servant leader? Who do you serve? I'm Ashraf Garda, and that's my point.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga.
We can't get into the merits of every utterance and every statement and sentiment as per politicians that they make, but let's touch on the theme of bias.
Well, Bridget, everyone's going to say something's biased if they don't like it, so it's the way it is. If you want your views affirmed and somebody's saying the opposite of that, but as your last caller says, the truth matters, and that's the role of journalists, to actually always get to the truth. And sometimes they're not just two sides to the story, there might be 5 sides to the story, and the facts matter. One's got to put the facts on the table.
Glenda Daniels is the Associate Professor of Media Studies at Wits University.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
I trust you had a very, very good weekend. I was feeling ill on Friday, feeling much better today. Not perfect, but much better. But now, of course, it's time for you and I to have a feel of the national pulse. And what really are we all feeling nationally, internationally, and when you personalize it, even in your own homes? By the way, that conversation that's my point about the Gogo, who's saying you've let us down. And my point about all the political parties, who ultimately do you serve? And are you a servant to the people? It's something that I feel strongly about, and I wonder whether you have similar thoughts to that. Tell me what you think, in fact, about that conversation. You can voice note or text right away. 064, no, let me get that right. 0614 104 107. 0614 104 107. To call in live, 086 000 2032. And if you are tweeting on the X platform, as well as on Facebook, where SAFM is found, you can certainly use the hashtag we used right throughout the show, the National Pulse. Do tag me as well, Ashraf Garda. Lots to consider, and I'll take your opinions right away. There's so much to talk about. We'll get a response on that DA advert about the flag burning. We'll get a response on that one there. There's even more. There's a challenge to Paul Kagame, a legal challenge to be able to contest an election for the upcoming election in Rwanda. We'll talk about that too. But let's start with a development regarding the South African Zionist Federation. Okay, so they've warned the South African government not to continue using the genocide term when describing the ongoing war between Israel and the Palestinians. Okay, let's find out exactly what this means and what are they really trying to say with Rolene Marks, who's the spokesperson for the South African Zionist Federation. Rolene, good chatting to you. Thanks for your time. Welcome to the National Pulse.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Now you speak to us firstly on a day of significance around the Holocaust, right? Tell me about that first.
So today is Yom HaShoah. It's Holocaust Memorial Day here in Israel. It is a day separate from International Holocaust Memorial Day, where we remember and commemorate specifically the Jewish victims of the Holocaust. It was the systematic extermination of the Jewish people during the Second World War by the Nazis and their collaborators. So it's a very, very solemn day here in Israel, a very, very sad day in Israel, starting at sunset. And it is a day that if you are able to hear from survivors of the Holocaust, who we lose on a daily basis as the passage of time marches on, then I really encourage people to listen to the last of the first eyewitnesses who survived the absolutely unimaginable.
All right, so
a very, very solemn day here.
Okay, so is it significant then that on this solemn day that the South African Zionist Federation, that's based in South Africa, of course, right, has issued a statement regarding what you call the South African government's misuse of the word or the phrase genocide? Tell me about that.
Well, first of all, I think that we've seen the South African government's position, certainly over the last couple of years, increasingly hostile towards the state of Israel, which is a great pity because South Africa, with its history, with its past of conflict resolution, really potentially could have played a very, very important role in brokering peace agreements between Israel and our Palestinian neighbors. As we've seen pieces with other countries in the Arab world. But unfortunately, the South African government has taken a specifically hostile stance. And what our statement was particularly alluding to, because we know that South Africa was the driver behind the court case at the International Court of Justice accusing Israel of genocide, is the clarification from the presiding Judge Donahue, who was the president of the International Court of Justice, where she said she wanted to make very, very clear that the court does not decide, and she says this is something where I'm correcting something that's often said in the media. It did not decide that the claim of genocide was plausible. The court determined that Palestinians have a plausible right to be protected from genocide, and that South Africa had the right to present its
All right,
case.
so
what we are trying to...
Roland, just a second.
My point, please.
No, I want to get clarity on this one here. I just want to say, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
What I am saying to you is we understand that that position is very contested by many people. I understand that part. But let's just stay then with the issue of the word genocide, okay? So you're making a certain call. Is it a call that you're making as a general statement, or are you making a call to government, or who are you making the call to drop the word genocide in describing how the country or how people perceive what's happening in that region of Israel-Palestine?
Well, I think it's a call not just to government, but in general. Genocide is specifically about the intent to eliminate an entire group or race of people, and that certainly is not the intention of the state of Israel. Our war is with Hamas. It is not with the Palestinian people. If anything, we want to ensure that civilians are protected. That is in direct contrast to Hamas, an internationally recognized terrorist organization prescribed in many countries around the world, whose governing charter called for the extermination of the Jewish people and the elimination of the state of Israel. And as we have heard from Hamas officials repeatedly, is that they want to commit the atrocities of the 7th of October, where we have had the evidence presented in all its macabre and horrendous nature by Hamas. We have had them saying we want to commit it again and again and again and again.
All right, Rolling.
Be very clear.
All right, Rolling. Just one point. Let's concede that even on the issue of what happened on October the 7th, the gravity has been contested. I'm not going to go down that road. There's just not enough time, right? Certainly a lot happened. Hostages have been taken. People have died. But the gravity has been contested from many, many different sources. We know that's point one. Point two, in Israel's then defense of what happened after October 7th, in attempting therefore to eliminate Hamas, right? Here's the big issue around the word genocide, that above 30,000 people have died, which gives a clear intent to destroy a large section of the community of a country. It is in that context that many people have used the word genocide,
okay,
including hold it. Rolling. No, listen. Listen, I manage the conversation here. I manage the conversation. You must understand that. I manage the conversation.
Give your guest chance to finish.
I manage the conversation, and I'm going to give you a chance to respond. I manage the conversation. You must understand that's the rules of engagement here. So I'm saying to you, the level of disproportionality has given rise to people calling or describing what's happened as a genocide, including countless numbers of human rights organizations and human rights organizations even within South Africa. Now, how do you respond to that?
First of all, let's go back to the 7th of October. Because I don't think that
I'm not doing. I'm asking you about the word.
Now you interrupt me. Now
Rolene,
you are interrupting me, and I would like to put.
I am managing this interview, and you must understand that. No, you must understand that I'm managing the interview. I have a limited amount of time to get you to answer the question only on the word genocide.
Let me answer the question. Without interrupting and patronizing me. That would be greatly appreciated. So let's go back to the 7th of October, where the world expressed its utter disgrace at the burning, the mutilation, the raping, the murdering. Not people died, people were murdered. And the abduction of over 253 people into Gaza, including Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, Hindu, and yes, Jews. What Hamas committed on the 7th of October was wholesale genocide. That was their intention. That's what they stated. That's what they celebrated. Now let's talk about Gaza. What is a proportionate response? I can tell you one thing that is not proportionate. Nobody in those Gaza-enveloped communities had a humanitarian corridor set up for them. None of them received leaflets, SMS, and pamphlets, and humanitarian aid, and field hospitals to try and save as many lives.
Rolene, I'm afraid we're not going to have Rolene, we're not going to have
by the Hamas-run Gaza ministry.
Rolene, we're not going to have unlimited time. Rolene, hold it.
11,000 were unaccounted.
Okay, Rolene, we do not have unlimited time. You need to understand that. Okay, what we're not even discussing is of what happened on October the 7th. I'm only talking about one issue today, which is the charge of genocide level against Israel that you're saying you want to have it dropped. And my question to you, and that's all I'm interested in right now, my question is, if 30 or 40,000 people have been killed in response to what happened on October the 7th, and many human rights organizations, including South Africa, believes that that is an act of genocide, why do you have a problem with that? That's what I'm interested in. And if you deny that, that's fine.
Are these the same human rights organizations who have yet to condemn the rape of our
Rolene, you're skirting the point. Rolene. No. Rolene, you are skirting the point. We are talking about.
You want to talk about genocide?
Sorry.
Let's have a conversation.
Listen to me.
Genocide.
I'm doing the interview, and you have to respond to me. You can't shout back at me like that. I'm doing the
interview.
No, you're not. I'm telling you. No, Rolene. Look, I don't think we can continue this way. If you're refusing to answer the question, if you're refusing to answer the question,
I'm trying to give you the answer, but you keep disrupting me because you are not hearing the answer that you want. If you think you are going to bait me into Israel is committing a genocide, we are not committing a genocide. That accusation of genocide has been refuted, not only by Israel, but by our allies, Germany, who knows a lot more about genocide, especially on a day like today, than many human rights organizations who have yet to condemn the atrocities of the 7th of October, who have yet to acknowledge the rape of the women and the girls, and yet still the hostages of the 7th of October, who have yet to call for the unconditional release of the hostages, many of them who are being held in appalling conditions.
Okay.
Do we want a war with the people of Gaza? No, we don't.
No, Rolene, you are giving...
Hamas enforced on both of us on the 7th of October.
Right. Are you done now, Rolene? Because you're giving commentary beyond what I asked you. I've only asked you one question. That's all, which is...
I gave you an answer.
I've asked you on the issue of the word genocide.
I'm not going to give you the answer you want, Ashraf.
No, you don't know what I want. You don't know what I want. I've only asked you the question on the issue of genocide that you wish South Africans and the world not to use. What is your plan of action to ensure that South Africa does not use that word? What I'm not talking about is anything that's happened before that. We're not even discussing that right now. It's you who's chosen to do that. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to say, in terms of your presentation today, or your request not to have the word genocide being called genocide, right? What then is your plan, and why do you think it should not be called genocide in the light of many people who believe 30,000 plus an annihilation of a community beyond just Hamas is what they would call genocide, and many human rights organizations in South Africa and the world? And that's all I want to know. Thank you. You can go ahead.
We have ably demonstrated, as we did in the International Court of Justice, as we have today with leaflets, SMSs, a humanitarian zone, humanitarian aid, and a look at the correct numbers of people who have been killed as a result of this war. It is not a genocide. We call on the South African government and South African human rights organizations to stop co-opting the word genocide to push their agenda against the state of Israel. South Africa has aligned itself with Iran. Iran has called repeatedly for the annihilation of the Jewish state. That is a call for genocide. Just a few weeks ago, rockets rained down on our cities as well as drones. And thank goodness we had a coalition of international partners, including Saudi Arabia, who recognized the repeated intentions of genocide by the Iranians, who joined us to help fight that.
Okay.
Nobody wants a war with the people of Gaza.
All right,
Israel
Rolene
has made that very, very clear.
Okay, Rolene, here's the last thing. Have you had a response from the South African government and any human rights organizations today with regard to your call today?
There has been no response from the South African government or from human rights organizations.
And that's where we'll leave it. Rolene Marks, thank you for your time, spokesperson for the South African Zionist Federation. By the way, we'll get another response from Saleh Hijazi, who is the apartheid-free policy coordinator with the BDS movement regarding the very same issue, coming up in about 10, 12 minutes' time. So listen out for that.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Okay, we're now going to move on to another issue that I think is of particular importance. We hear that from Rwanda, that's Victor Ingabire Umuhoza, who recently approached the East African Court of Justice to obtain a ruling against the Rwandan state's refusal to restore her civil rights, including, this is important, the right to run in the elections scheduled to take place in July of this year, in fact. So we have on the line Victor Ingabire Umuhoza. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Much appreciated. So give us a quick background in terms of what has happened to you and what prevents you from being able to contest the upcoming election.
As you know, I am a mother of 3 children. And with the children, I live in Rwanda, but my husband and my children live in Netherlands. And I come back. I was refugee in Netherlands, and I come back in 2010 with the intention to participate in the presidential election for 2010. And when a few months later, I was arrested and condemned for 15 years. And I made appeal to the Africa Court on Human and People Rights, or to clear my name. And but the government of Rwanda refused to recognize this decision of the African Court. And I was released after 80 years, after spending 80 years in prison, which 5 years I was held in solitary confinement. So this, since I was released, it was released in 2018. And according to Rwanda law, I have the right after 5 years to ask to be rehabilitated. So I introduced my application to ask to the High Court, the Kigali, to ask to be rehabilitated. But the High Court rejected my application on the basis of the president's pardon. And because the judge also was wrong by saying that I cannot get rehabilitation because I was released by president's pardon. This is why I introduced my application to the Eastern Africa Court, where I am asking to have justice justice to recover my political and civil rights, that I can visit my husband, because since 2000 I have left my family until today. I did not saw my husband, and today my husband fell sick, and I would like to visit him.
Okay.
And I want also to participate in the next election that will be held in Rwanda in July 2000.
And does this East Africa Court have any jurisdiction over what happens in Rwanda?
Africa Court?
Yeah, does it have any jurisdiction, the East Africa Court? Can what they decide have an impact on what happens in Rwanda? Can they decide on behalf of Rwanda that you can go to Rwanda and contest an election there?
Yes, because Rwanda is a member of the Eastern Africa Community, and the Africa Eastern Court is one of the organs of the Africa Eastern Community. So this means that all members of the Eastern Africa Community has to respect the decision of the Court of Eastern Africa.
Okay. How, just very quickly, and your sense of the level of the rights to contest elections in Rwanda, how free or not so free is it?
You know, in Rwanda we have a problem of restriction to political activities. If you take a look to the presidential election since 2003, in Rwanda there have been arrested, all candidates or everybody wanted to participate in the election were arrested. All basic placed opposition figures who could have competed with President Kagame were arrested. So, and today, only there are 2 persons who are allowed to compete against Kagame.
Okay.
So I don't understand why if the ruling party said his candidate, President Kagame, is so popular among Rwandans. I don't understand.
All right. Well, it's certainly it's a story we're going to have to follow, and we wish you well. And I think everybody wants free and fair elections in all parts of the world. So thank you for your time, Victor Ingabire Umuhoza, in fact, at this point in time, approaching the East African Court of Justice to obtain a ruling against the Rwandan state's refusal to restore her civic rights. Let's get the news headlines now, slightly delayed, with Madubi.
Thank you very much, Ashraf, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines, a report by the Competition Commission shows that prices on various food items are beginning to come down despite various challenges. The ANC has officially communicated to former party President Jacob Zuma that his disciplinary committee hearing has been postponed, and members of the Jewish community have gathered in Pinelands in Cape Town to commemorate the annual Holocaust Day, or Yom HaShoah. Details of these and other stories coming up at 4.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
No change from this morning. South of Joburg, Rand Airport Road, or South Rand Road if you like. The road remains closed down. It's still shut between Funda-Hever Road and the N3 highway on-ramp. So Tulisa Parkside through that region to and from Rand Airport, to and from Germiston, remains closed as a result of protesting earlier this morning. The N1 up through Midrand looking okay today. The N1 through Pretoria then moving nicely as well. Over in Durban, queuing up again on the N2 southbound between Umgeta Road and Spaghetti Junction as you come into the roadworks, and there is a breakdown in the construction between Pavilion and Paradise Valley, so if you're on your way out towards Pinetown, a little bit of queuing pressure there as well. Cape Town today, the M3, that's heavy as you go from Hospital Bend, big backlogs passing UCT down towards Rhodes Drive. That's a lot heavier than you'd expect for this time of afternoon. And if you're driving Eastern Cape, the N2 is closed today for blasting until 5 p.m. It's a closure from 3 p.m. until 5 p.m. between Makhanda and Fish River Pass. So you'll be diverted, I guess, along the R72 for the duration of that blasting closure. Road should be reopened by about 5 p.m. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Khapele.
All
Right, to be big sporting awards night yesterday, right?
Yeah, it was absolutely great. And we hear from one of the recipients, Springbok fly half Mani Libok, who insists that as the country celebrates 30 years of democracy, it's an honor for him as a player of color to be part of a transformed Boks team. Libok won Newcomer of the Year at the South African Sports Awards in Sun City yesterday. And he says that they witnessed how winning the Rugby World Cup brought South Africans together.
Man, it's being part of the new South Africa. Obviously, it's amazing. It's very nice being part of it. And sports is the power to bring us together. Sport is the power to bring hope to the country. And that's what all the sports does. Obviously, soccer. Cricket, netball, and rugby as well. We saw obviously with us winning the Rugby World Cup for the 4th time in France last year. The amount of hope, the amount of happiness it brought to our country. What's immense, man. So
Moving on to athletics, the 4x400 meter team from South Africa put on a show at the World Athletics Relays in Bahamas over the weekend, claiming silver respectively last night. The team gave a taste of things to come in the heat with SA's Light Play over the line in 2 minutes and 59 seconds and securing the qualification spots at the Paris Olympic Games later this year. So a big congratulations to Team SA. It was absolutely great to see Wade van Niekerk being part of the team. Then in football, Royal AM is under pressure to perform and will be backing themselves when they lock horns with the wounded Cape Town Spurs side in the DStv Premiership. And John Maduka's men are winless in their last 3 league fixtures, and they're currently 14th in the standings and have 29 points, but they have a game in hand over Morocco Swallows and Richards Bay, who are 13th and 15th respectively. As for Cape Town Spurs, Ernst Middendorp's Chargers are close to being automatically relegated as they continue languishing in 16th place with 15 points. The team gave the football fraternity hope when they beat Richards Bay. However, things are not looking good for them. Meanwhile, Stellenbosch FC coach Steve Barker says that he remains proud of his side despite crashing out of the Nedbank Cup to Mamelodi Sundowns in the semi-final. Stellies gave Sundowns a close run at the Danny Craven Stadium with the kind of performance that Barker feels proved that they are well ready for continental stage.
I believe, and I can confidently say, I think we're on the right track, that if we can take Sundowns the way we did today and push them all the way, I do believe that it was a good sign for us. But yeah, not meant to be today. We gave a valiant effort, but just not enough in the end.
Elsewhere, Julian Lopetegui has agreed a deal to become West Ham manager at the end of the season. Nothing has been signed as yet, but the 57-year-old is close to making a return to management following his departure from Wolves in August last year. Current Hammers boss David Moyes has come under increasing pressure after a poor run of results that has seen his side win one of their past 9 Premier League games and exit the Europa League in the quarterfinals. Then in tennis, Yannick Sinner says that he will only compete at the Roland Garros if he fully recovers from a hip problem that forced him out of the Madrid and Rome, The world number 2 sustained the injury at Madrid, which saw him pull out of his quarterfinal against Felix Auger-Aliassime last week, and he says that he will prioritize his health over everything, but admitted that missing out in Rome would make things difficult for him. Anything's off with women in sports. A new research done by the Women's Sports Foundation shows that there's power in sports improving the mental state of young girls. Now, the study shows that in 2023, approximately 40% teen girls were dealing with the feelings of feeling sad and hopelessness. And now the report found that sports participation can actually lower depression and anxiety, and that girls who play sports experience 1.5 to 2.5 times fewer mental health disorders than girls who never played sports. So parents who are currently listening, do encourage your girl child to play sports because it will help them a great deal on the long run. Well, that's it.
Mani Libok.
Yeah.
What a player.
Absolutely amazing.
I mean, he's got so much flair, and I think I just hope he turns out to be one of the great players. He's already a World Cup winner, I know that.
Yeah.
But what a player, like him. Yeah.
He did deserve the award from last night. Well, with that said, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in at the next hour for SAFM Sport. I'm Tumin Kapele.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Okay, right. We're going to chat. So you've heard the interview that I had with Rolene Marks, the speaking on behalf of the South African Zionist Federation. I did say we'll get another response on that to the word genocide pretty shortly. So we'll chat to Saleh Hijazi, not quite now, in a few minutes' time. Let's, however, get further comments from you, of course, because this is the National Pulse. Joe in Cape Town, hi.
Hi, good afternoon. Ashraf.
Yeah.
You know, Ashraf, 13,000 women, more than 13,000 women. 15,000 children have been killed, according to Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and obviously other organizations in 6 months. That excludes the thousands of people that are still under the rubble, the mass graves that are popping up left, right, and center throughout northern Gaza, with people's hands being zip-tied behind their backs, executed, where bulldozers drove over people. And yet this lady still questions if it's a genocide or what.
So what's your understanding of a genocide? Because, I mean, that's really the conversation. What is a genocide and what isn't?
Well, it's a genocide because in 6 months, more than 25,000 women and children, that excluding old men, innocent men with nothing to do with Hamas, that have been killed, in 6 months.
Okay.
Now, how much more crimes must Israel commit before the Zionist Federation, who called on Netanyahu to stop killing? Now, on Holocaust Memorial, they are now going to attack Rafah, and they're bombing and killing.
Okay, but that's another story. I'm looking at, just specifics on the word genocide, and that's what we're talking about. Joe, got that? Thank you for your time. All right. Let's get another from Durban this time. Suleiman on the line. Hi, Suleiman.
There's a the conversation with the lady, Mark's lady that you spoke to. I didn't listen to the entire conversation. I just walked into the room just in the middle of the conversation. But my point is, October the 7th never happened in a vacuum. For 17 years, these guys were kept as prisoners. The Israelis claim to have left Gaza, but they've locked the gates. And the people have no say. They control the electricity, they control the water they drink, they control everything. Now, if I was in that position, I would definitely fight for my life.
Okay, but Suleiman, again, I just want to be fair because I want to be narrow on this issue because all we are focusing on is the word genocide. Now, I don't want to go back into what happened before because I've certainly spoken about that myself. I'm looking at on the issue of because that's what Rolene Marks is saying, that what has happened since October 7th is not genocide. What's happened on October 7th is genocide. What's your thoughts on that?
No. That's false. That's false. How can that be? Common sense will tell you here how many people were killed on the 7th of October compared to 34 to 35,000 people today. I mean, that is genocide. That is genocide. People that have not a single tank, not a single aircraft to fight and defend themselves, and you saying that it's not genocide? Women and children, majority be killed. I mean, that's genocide. No, you don't need a professor or anybody. That's some genocide. What you're doing to the people of Palestine.
Okay, Suleiman. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
She said that Hamas. What they claim is that if Hamas returns the hostages and surrender, then at the end of the war. What about the hostage they're holding for how many years? People. Come on.
All right.
They can't have it all their way.
Okay. All right, Suleiman, I got that. We're going to move on because we're going to get to the next guest. I appreciate your time. I'm just sticking with and really for the purpose of this conversation, we're looking at the wording in terms of is what has happened in that region, Israel, Palestine, is what has happened on October 7th a genocide, is what has happened after that a genocide, and that's what we want to talk about now. With me now is Saleh Hijazi, who's part of the Apartheid-Free Policy Coordinator. He's a coordinator, in fact, with the BDS movement. Saleh, I appreciate your time, and you're live on the National Pulse.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you. You probably heard that the representative from the South African Zionist Federation has put forward a thought that on this day, South Africans and others should refrain from describing what's happened beyond October 7th as a genocide. What's your response to that?
Well, look, we'll look at the authoritative bodies and institutions, particularly the International Court of Justice, that had, in the ruling of provisional measures in the case that was brought by South Africa against Israel under the Genocide Convention, confirmed the plausibility of genocide. We also look at the UN Special Rapporteur, the special expert who submitted a report to the Human Rights Council just this last March, also making the case of how Israel is perpetrating genocide against the 2.3 million Palestinians living in the occupied and besieged Gaza Strip, and made recommendations to states, the Human Rights Council, the UN system, and so on. We also look at the Raphael Lemkin Institute for Genocide Prevention. Raphael Lemkin was the author of the Genocide Convention. He was a Jewish legal scholar who was basically spearheaded the work and the drafting of that convention, which is now, a pillar of the international system right now. And they have as well warned about genocide that's being carried out by Israel against Palestinians. They've even made a warning before the genocide started in October with regards to Israel's actions in the West Bank.
Okay, what is your definition? What is your definition of the word or the phrase genocide?
So look, it's codified in international law. Genocide is a crime that is where you seek the end of a people as such. So a group is taking action to eliminate another group in whole or in part. So it's a crime of one group over another. In this context, it's a crime by the colonizers, the Israelis against the indigenous Palestinians.
Okay. Now, what do you feel? And I'm taking it purely on the response of today, not yesterday and not previous times, when the South African Zionist Federation spokesperson repeats what was said by Judge Joan Donoghue, making the point that the court determined that the Palestinians have a plausible right to be protected from genocide, which is not the case of that they found for genocide.
But look, I think that's just saying the same thing and using different words. Judge O'Donoghue is no longer a judge on the court. She was the president and she presided over the proceedings in the first hearings of the case that was brought by South Africa. There are other judges, their opinions are out there, they're written. But what does it mean to say that you have rights to be protected under the Genocide Convention? And there's that is plausible. That means it's plausible that your rights as a group under the Genocide Convention may be violated. The court is still looking into the merits of the case. But the plausibility of the crime and the violation of rights under the Genocide Convention has been confirmed by the court. So it's just another way of saying it, for whatever reason. We're not going to get into why.
So that's according to you, that the word plausible suggests that there is, the conditions for a genocide as it stands, as opposed to it may happen. I'm just trying to understand it.
Yes, that it is, the court sees that there's reasonable grounds to believe that, that there's reasonable grounds for the case that was brought by South Africa, which is charging genocide against Israel.
Roland Marx also said at some stage in the conversation with me that what happened on October the 7th is genocide. That's the attack from Hamas to the Israelis. That's a genocide.
Well, look, again, genocide is, it's codified in international law. There's a convention. It's also in the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. There are multiple bodies that have been looking and investigating what has happened since October 7th and before, because we also have to remember that, history does not start from October 7th. It starts in 1948 when an apartheid regime was established
but
Palestine.
Saleh, I just want you to respond to that part. I mean, is her claim that what happened on October the 7th a genocide? Is that correct? In terms of your understanding?
It's not, no. Of course not.
How would you describe? How would you describe what happened on October the 7th?
Look, I would refer to the authoritative body under international law. We have bodies like the Commission of Inquiry that was set up by the Human Rights Council, which has been prevented by Israel from entering and doing the investigations, including what happened on October 7th and beyond that. We have special rapporteurs, UN experts that have been for years prevented by Israel from entering. We have human rights organizations. I myself was working for Amnesty International for 11 years. I authored the report of the organization that the organization produced on Israel's apartheid. I was prevented many times from entering Gaza and carrying out an investigation. As we speak, actually, Israel is taking action against those who are seeking and trying to expose the truth. Just yesterday, they closed down the offices of Al Jazeera.
I'm aware of that.
I'm not an expert in genocide. I refer to the experts in genocide. Okay. Raphael Lemkin Institute, the International Court of Justice, the UN Human Rights Council mechanisms, human rights organizations.
Okay,
and so
your
on.
point made, right? Okay, let's end with this then. So the request on the suggestion is made to South Africa and the others. You cannot and you should not be using the word genocide to describe what's happened. How should South Africa respond to that?
I'm sorry to keep making the same point, but we have experts. The special rapporteur submitted a big report to the Human Rights Council making the case of genocide. We have the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, 57 countries that are part of that organization that are saying Israel is perpetrating genocide against Palestinians in Gaza.
All right.
African Union is saying genocide. The Arab League is saying genocide. Ireland is intervening in the ICJ on the side of South Africa on this case. So, look, let's look at those. Not the opinion, the political opinion of somebody here and there.
Okay.
We have authoritative bodies that are saying genocide, Israel is perpetrating genocide against Palestinians.
And that's where we're going to leave it to Saleh Hijazi, Apartheid-Free Policy Coordinator with the BDS movement, suggesting, in fact, look at the human rights organizations and the watchdogs, which in fact is what I've suggested as well at the very outset of that communication or the conversation with Roland Marks, to say, look at what human rights experts in South Africa and around the world have said in describing what has happened. We're talking about post-October 7th, to be very, very clear. And is that a genocide or not?
SABC Sport is proud to bring you the best polo match on television screens. Watch the South African national polo teams take on the best from around the world. First on the annual fixture is the eagerly awaited international battle at the Nedbank International Polo on Saturday, 11 May 2024 from 1:30 p.m. Watch live on SABC Sport as Argentina, the best of the Americas, face off with South Africa, the best of Africa. Catch the build-up, the international match, and the prize-giving ceremony on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Right, further comments are welcome, and we get a chance, we'll certainly take your calls in terms of what do you make of the conversations we've had with the two representatives with different opinions around genocide and whether, in fact, what is happening in that region, Israel, Palestine, Gaza, I'm looking at all those words interchangeably, is that what you understand as a genocide or not? You can certainly comment. You can voice note us to 0614 104 107, right? Okay, now Archbishop Desmond Tutu was vilified by the apartheid government and had his passport confiscated, but he kept struggling for freedom, and after voting in the very first democratic election in 1994, he said it felt so good, it was like falling in love. On May the 29th, the Kagiso Trust's Remember Me initiative encourages South Africans to honor Tutu's memory by exercising the right he fought so hard for, the right to vote. #Remember Me.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Tell you what, there's been lots of conversation around that advert with that flag and that burning flag by the Democratic Alliance. Let's get the thoughts of the national spokesperson of the DA, Solly Malatsi, who's on the line with us now. Solly, great chatting to you. Thanks for giving off your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Thanks very much, Ashraf, for the opportunity. And since this is my first time after a while, welcome back on radio.
Well, there you are. Much appreciated indeed. You give me a smile suddenly. Right. Let's talk then about the advert firstly. First things first. Describe, for me, the advert, the way you see the narrative, how it plays out.
Yeah, look, I mean, the aim of the advert is to showcase the slide that the country is on and the risk that it will continue to go on should we enter into the prospect of a coalition, which we have titled the Doomsday Coalition, which would be a coalition between the ANC, the EFF, and the MK. And this is largely given the fact that when you look at the state of South Africa currently in terms of unemployment levels, in terms of crime, in terms of the cost of living, South Africa is in a very difficult time, and these parties collectively represent some worrisome trends that showcase that South Africa is on a slide, right? When you look at the flag, the burning of that flag represents that slide. And to showcase that there is still hope, that flag is not completely burned out, and it is then restored, because we see at a very crucial stage with this election that if we do not redirect the country into the right leadership that will restore South Africa on the path of prosperity, we might not have another good chance to restore it on that path.
So up to that point, Solly, I think many people will agree with you. Even the ruling party, there are just so many people within the ANC who are concerned about what has happened to our country and whether we can actually save it. So I think we're all on side on that issue, right? I think the biggest issue is how it's been depicted, right? So one of the issues has been the burning of the flag. Now, to depict, as you've suggested, the loss of what is good about South Africa. Are you surprised at the level of condemnation to that today? I mean, it's been widespread across the country.
Well, I think a lot of it has been hyperventilated in terms of the reaction, but I think it misses the crucial aspect of, what we are the message you're trying to convey with that ad is that the stakes are simply too high with this election. And as I indicated earlier, if we do not turn around the country at this crucial stage and redirect it on the path of prosperity by making sure that we elect the right leadership with the right ideas and the right policies, we might not have a prosperous society.
No, look, I think we understand that part, but sorry, we understand that part. What I'm curious about now is not so much your overall messaging. We get that. The issue is now bigger about the burning of the flag to depict the DA's interpretation of the state of South Africa now. I'm saying there's been opposition. You're saying there's been hyperventilation. Do you not think people have a point? I mean, it may not be legally wrong, but I think many people suggest that morally it's just the wrong approach to take.
Look, I think there's a symbolism. The flag is a symbolic representation of the identity of the country. And what that flag demonstrates is, as I indicated, the risk that we face in terms of the state of the country as it is now and the options that we have in terms of turning it around. And this is not a literal burning of the flag. It is a depiction of the high state of the election.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, to be fair to you, I think it's common sense, it's not literal, and we need to be more mature about that part. But having said that, the point that if the message was to show us just in what a poor state our country now is, even if it was not literal about the burning of the flag, the level of opposition suggests now the focus is on the DA, suggesting that, it's a case of like fighting no prisoners, that we won't even protect our flag. Do you not see now how the messaging appears to have gone wrong against the DA's messaging?
Well, look, I mean, you make a very interesting point because you contrast it with, the reaction with what you also get into the message. And that is the nature of political ads. They spark conversation, and different individuals may have different interpretations of what they mean. But the key message is there, and I think it's a message that is very difficult to argue against.
Okay. How much, take us maybe into the, confidence about when the advert was signed off, because lots of people are talking about, who was the ad agency? Was there pushback, or was it very clear, straightforward? Yes, we love the advert. It's good to go.
Well, we generate most of our own content, so it's something that we've generated internally, and it has been through all the key leadership structures of the party that sign off on campaign material.
Okay, so was it an internal production, not an advertising agency? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. In the light of the opposition to it, relative criticism, and I hear what you said earlier on as well, right? Is there anything else that the DA would want to say to change the opinions of those who criticize what they saw overnight?
Look, I think the key thing is the fundamental message that is in the ad is that we face two choices, and those choices are really simple choices. We face the prospect of a doomsday coalition and a coalition through the multi-party charter that we believe can restore South Africa to the path of prosperity that, many of those who fought for South Africa's democracy and freedom envisioned, and we believe that we are the best representation of that.
Maybe the last thing, and I understand, certainly having a knowledge of marketing and branding, that a shock message does work. If the ultimate intent of the DA is to win more votes, right? Do you think that this campaign will succeed on that, or do you think there needs to be a slight retraction in the light of what's happened?
Well, the ultimate intent is to underscore how much the stakes are in this election, and for the voter to make their call.
Okay, and we shall see whether that's how they will interpret that as well. Solly Malatsi, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us and giving the DA position on that advert. He, of course, is the DA national spokesperson. What do you make of that advert? What do you make of his explanation that it's symbolic? They didn't really burn a flag. What do you make of that? Do you have an opinion on that? But ultimately, do you think the advert works in terms of actually communicating a message to you and I to say, there's so much wrong in the country, you need to relook at what we're going to do in an election, and then who do you back in this upcoming election? If it succeeds in that, then you may well say it succeeds. But if it's caused a bigger row and turned you against those who communicated the message, then I want to know about that as well. And you know the connection. You can call me or WhatsApp, voice note, or text. All those options are available to you. Let's get to the news desk now. Madupi Makalamela, as always, is standing by. It's 4 o'clock.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. The top stories this hour: food prices start coming down and a building collapses in the George CBD. Very good afternoon. A report by the Competition Commission shows that prices on various food items are beginning to come down despite various challenges. These include persistent load shedding, rail and ports constraints, and the global supply disruption resulting from the conflict in the Red Sea. The report indicates that proper producer price cuts in sunflower oil, as well as price reductions in the price of eggs, which was largely influenced by the avian flu, have started to come down. The Commission's Kagiso Zwane says food inflation reached its highest level, but has since dropped significantly to reach 5.1% in March this year.
The producer price of eggs has started coming down, and there has been a slower transmission at the retail level, but it is still present. And this might indicate a period where retailers are also building some of their margins, since the spreads imply that those might have been sacrificed in the avian flu outbreak period. On the next panel is the producer to retail spreads for frozen chicken. We see that in line with previous trends, the retail spread for chicken continues to fall. This is despite an increase in producer prices that came through last year.
The ANC has officially communicated to former party President Jacob Zuma that his disciplinary committee hearing has been postponed. This is revealed in a notice of postponement, which cites security concerns as the reasons behind the postponement. The notice further informs Zuma that a new date for the hearing will be arranged after the elections. Kenny Mapanga reports.
This notice comes after ANC Secretary-General Fikile Mbalula advised the NDC, an independent structure, that such an activity needs to be held in abeyance until after the elections, due to the security concerns. Zuma is charged with 2 counts of contravening the ANC constitution due to his involvement with the MK party. It is unclear at this stage whether the newly formed Mkhonto weSizwe party is still mobilizing its troops to descend on Luthuli House on Tuesday. Kenny Mapanga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
A building under construction in the George CBD in the Western Cape has collapsed. Emergency services are on the scene. The building on the corners of Victoria and York Streets came crashing down this afternoon. The George municipality says a number of ambulances have been dispatched to the scene. It says at this stage it could not comment on the number of casualties. The municipality has asked the public to refrain from trying to view the incident and to give way to emergency vehicles. Motorists are urged to exercise caution and use alternative routes due to a protest action in Elands Park on the east of Joburg. The protest is over power outages in the area. Traffic is heavily affected at the intersection of South Rand and Rand Airport roads due to barricades. Metro Police spokesperson Xolani Fihla.
The situation is calm besides the road closure. We have received early reports of vehicles being stoned, but nothing of that nature has been reported to the JMPD. The closure has caused disruptions with traffic traveling between Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni. Motorists are urged to exercise caution, avoid that route and use alternative routes such as the N17.
And members of the Jewish community have gathered in Pinelands in Cape Town to commemorate the annual Holocaust Day, or Yom HaShoah. Every year, Jewish communities around the world pay tribute to the memory of 6 million women, children, and men who were killed during the Holocaust. The Jewish Board of Deputies, Daniel Bloch.
So in Cape Town we have a number of survivors, including Ella Blumenthal, who's 102, and she's here today. She lit the last memorial candle. And I think the significance is we have the sayings, remember and never again. And it's important to teach our youth and to teach everyone that atrocities like the Holocaust, a genocide of 6 million people, can never be forgotten. And we need to learn from the mistakes from the past.
The top story this hour, a report by the Competition Commission, shows that prices on various food items are beginning to come down despite various challenges. For SAFM News, Kemodupi Makhalemele.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Rivero fighting for CAF Champions League spot and Glasgow heading to Loftus full of confidence. More details at 4:30.
I'm just pointing it to you like this because
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just look at Joburg's Mike 1 today. All of a sudden, some queuing pressure up towards Marlborough Drive. It looks like it's probably a collision scene if you're coming from Melrose up through Sandton on your way towards Midrand. There is a backlog of traffic building up pretty quickly into that area. The R21 going north, roadworks before the Benoni exit, and then more roadworks up through Clayville. 2 queues to work through on your way through towards Pretoria, and that 1 queue at Clayville on your way towards the airport today as well. Durban's N2 between Umgeda Road and Spaghetti Junction stays very busy. It has been since about midday today. And Cape Town, the M3 reasonably heavy still, queuing up through Hospital Bend down as far as Rhodes Drive in the Newlands area, and the M5 is already looking pretty sluggish. Queues from the Kuba interchange right through to about Racecourse Road in the Kenilworth area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Nalibito la ka ke bonolo mo aghi di bantse ba re Miss B morara Miss T mo ahludi the Bonnie B Bonbon, and we'll be now playing Kena on Mondays at 4:30. The day has changed but the time slot hasn't. So if you're interested in news that's happening with us kids and our peers around the world, don't forget to tune in. See you there.
EFC is live this Thursday. 2 grappling wizards will battle it out for the vacant welterweight title at EFC 113 as Gelson Souza and Zakir Banat fight it out for championship glory. Plus, Faiz Jacobs is out for revenge against the great Sylvester Chipumbu for #1 contendership. EFC 113 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
And I hope you get a feel of the national pulse, whatever it is that you're feeling right now. And, you can certainly communicate that feeling to us in many forms, WhatsApp, voice notes, or text, 0614 104 107, or you can call into 086 000 2032. Many people commenting on two issues in particular, the issue of the DA flag issue and that advert, and we'll talk about, well, we've already spoken about it. We'll get another take on that with Tebe Kalafeng later on. And then, of course, on the issue of is what is happening in Gaza, in Palestine, is that a genocide, or as per the South African Zionist Federation's comments requesting not to South Africans and others not to use the term or the phrase or the word genocide. So there's lots of people want to comment on that. We'll try and squeeze in as much of those calls as when we can get a chance. Believe me, we certainly want to do that. Let's, however, talk about the on-off Zuma DC issue, right? So you all know that, when we spoke last week, we heard that the former president, Jacob Zuma, was to appear before an ANC DC coming up on Tuesday, right? Well, subsequently, that didn't happen. And the official line is the issue around security. But let's find out more about it and what that really means, okay? So with me is a political analyst and visiting professor at Wits University, Professor Susan Boyson. Susan, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good to speak to you.
Thank you. So maybe first things first, what is your understanding by the date set for the DC for the 7th of May and the official position that said they're not having it, and I think something around, being alluded to around the issues of safety on the outside or in the upcoming election. What do you make of that official stance first?
Ashraf, it is such a vexing issue, this on, off, etc. And the reasons, most intriguing part probably, is that there are really these reasons of security that are being given. Anybody who had applied his or her mind for a few seconds should have known that security issue existed well before the disciplinary committee meeting was announced. So it is indicating at this stage, at least pointing to vacillation, to uncertainty, to lack of proper calculation, what the situation might entail, what the risks are from on the side of the ANC. So it comes across as really a haphazard process. And this is not doing the ANC's image well at all at the time of this crucial standoff with the MK party.
I noticed that the ANC's Secretary General Fikile Mbalula made the point that the request, and I hope I've got this right, to have the DC put in what he called abeyance till after the election was made by the organization that actually runs the DC. So it wasn't his office, to put it that way. Is that how you see it?
Well, we know from documentation that the NEC or the ANC is probably the ultimate body here, that had taken the decision that, yes, go ahead with the disciplinary hearing at some stage. We know it was pretty much inevitable that it would have to follow ever since in late January the ANC imposed suspension on Zuma. Once you put in suspension, you have to see the process through. But still, it would have been possible to reverse that and say continuous evidence indicates that there is that this is an unmendable situation, irreversible, and therefore Zuma had given ample evidence that there is no going back, and therefore it's a summary ending of membership. I think that would have been the least damaging and would have been in some ways played the game by the same rules that Zuma plays by.
Exactly, playing outside the actual rules, so to speak. Now, having said that, last week when we knew the date was set for Tuesday, we've had some other analysts and saying like Zuma is so lucky and effectively so is the MK party, meaning that Tuesday, the DC was going to be a gift to them to basically get on the runway ahead of the election. It's the type of publicity you dream of. Do you agree, firstly, that would have been the case?
Absolutely. What a platform was, what kind of ample oxygen to ventilate your issues and to hijack the opposition, and opposition in this case, the main body of the ANC, to hijack their agendas for your own wonderful purposes. It would have been a dream come true.
So then, if you agree with that, then we may think that the ANC has maybe flip-flopped and looked rather foolish, but in fact, tactically, somebody strategically has told them, don't be fools, we cannot have this DC in the run-up to the election, and therefore what's right for the ANC is for it to be put in abeyance. You agree?
I really think that somehow must have happened. Also, there was so much public comment on this step to have the DC at Luthuli House, of all places, on this crucial day just a few weeks before the election, that the ANC decision makers on this must have gotten that message loud and clear. And I think it must have been so vivid once they start thinking through it. Imagine Zuma against the backdrop of the Luthuli House offices, the headquarters of the ANC, that his own image being projected on that, and he would have made a big thing of the narratives that there's the Zuma ANC, the real ANC, and the Ramaphosa ANC, which he rejects, and that whole additional narrative as to why he is not leaving the ANC but running for another party. He would definitely have used that. And in some ways, it is possible. We do not know what the MK Party's plans are for tomorrow, but it's still even possible that it could still unfold.
That they could still be protesting outside Luthuli House?
I imagine that it could. They are on such a run on this one, and they're making such a big thing that it is cancelled, but that they don't accept it. I wouldn't be surprised.
And
something like that, or some substitute.
Okay, so let's assume it happens. Let's assume they do just that, right?
Yeah.
What then do you think the ANC should do?
It is so difficult at such a late stage for the ANC to effectively counter it, but they should probably just let it go and have their own alternative events. We know the ANC also running big campaigns with high-level people deployed around KwaZulu-Natal, probably just play their additional side game. And I don't think it would serve any constructive, positive purpose for the ANC to come in with a direct counter against that.
Yeah, so don't give them the runway, as we discussed, or the oxygen. Appreciate your time. Certainly got us thinking, Professor Susan Boyson. Much appreciated. We'll, I'm sure, talk lots more in the build-up to May 29. There we are, Professor at Wits University, visiting professor there, political analyst as well, Professor Susan Boyson. What do you make of that? The fact that, that's DC will not happen tomorrow, but it may not stop the MK Party, in fact, from protesting. By the way, if you are part of the MK Party, if you are protesting and you want to tell us about it, well, let us know too. We certainly want to know if you are going to pitch up at Luthuli House outside, that is, anyway, right? Right. Thoughts, comments on two things. Kgalema Motlanthe, I made reference to the lady from Diepkloof suggesting that, you've let us down and you haven't fixed up anything, and he's literally said you've given us the marching orders. That one, and on the Israel-Palestine genocide issues. I'll take your calls and look at some of your WhatsApp text and voice notes right after this.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, let's get to some of the calls. First up, we go to Durban. Errol, hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
I certainly can, yes, Errol. Go ahead.
Always nice talking to you. I always like listening to you.
Much appreciated.
You are very professional with your approach. But anyway, what I want to talk about, that guy you interviewed, he never really answered your question when you said what Hamas did, was that genocide on October the 27th or the 7th? Yeah,
yeah, that's right.
He sort of talked around it. Yeah. Okay. Israel, I reckon they got a lot to blame for the killing of Palestine people. I mean, they acted without restraint. The laws went out the window. They also hell bent on killing Hamas. Mm-hmm. But in my heart of hearts, I don't believe that they wanted to kill the civilians, because they often drop pamphlets asking the civilians to move out, but the civilians were prevented from Hamas, who use them as human targets.
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and Errol, I mean, I understand it's complex, right? Without getting into the history, and that's my point earlier. We don't have time to like a 15-minute conversation, even beforehand, right? But just dealing with October 7th onwards, and I understand what you're saying, but and this is the point I think I said, and even the guest we had from BDS, that there's sufficient evidence from human rights groups that suggested that once Israel attacked Hamas, right, there was sufficient grounds for them to attack the Hamas military, if you want to put it that way, but it seemed like it exploded to the point where the levels are completely disproportionate, like 95% to 5. Now, how then do you then not hold the Israeli government to account for that?
Well, as I said, Israel, we're also to blame a lot, for indiscriminately bombing. They would say hell-bent on getting rid of Hamas. But, Ashraf, in war, there's often civilian casualties, unfortunately. In 1945, Dresden was bombed by the RAF because they had factories and Germans were held up there. And 30,000 people got killed. They never mentioned that as genocide. 30,000 civilians got caught in the crossfire by Churchill.
Yeah, maybe, and I'm a bit naive here, maybe phrases at that stage were not coined or used in those words now. I think now there's an international criminal court that does just that. So maybe that's possibly why. If it happens now, it could be a very different story, like what's happened in Rwanda, for example. Errol, appreciate your time. Thanks for the call. Enjoyed the fact that, sometimes we talk and we agree in moments and disagree in moments, but we get a good sense of the national pulse. Thomas, let's get your opinion. Hi, Thomas.
Ashraf, how are you?
I'm very good indeed. Go ahead. Yeah.
Ashraf, I wasn't gonna call, but I really got a bit upset with the lady that you interviewed. I think she is pro-Israeli.
Well, look, she's the representative from the South African Zionist Federation, Rolene Marx. Yes.
Exactly. And she can be pro whatever she wants to be pro. And I'm not taking any particular stance on this issue, but I got upset with her when she disrespects South Africa. Because you are having your own parameters of the discussion. You said the thing. She shouldn't have agreed to come on air if she wasn't going to respect the questions you were asking and respond within that ambit.
Well, I think you're spot on. I think that's really what it is. And I'll tell you what, Thomas, just so that I can inform the audience as well, everybody, okay, while you're on hold, that, we've got, say, 7 minutes, maximum 10 minutes to talk to a person. We have to speak within the parameters of what we've agreed upon, okay? So, for example, when I get the DA coming up now and we speak about their advert, I don't at the same time talk about how's Helen Ziller, why did you get rid of Musi Maimani? There is no time for that. We're only discussing one issue, right? And that's what we focus on. Yes, and my job, but Thomas, here's it, my job is to moderate it in the context of that, what we've agreed upon. So in this case, all we're discussing is the framing of the word genocide. Now, at that time, certainly...
Sorry, Ashraf, before you even take my time.
Yeah.
The goal of her questioning your integrity and the way you're running everything and that, while she is a guest in your house, as it would be, I mean, this is what gets people like us who choose to forget everything to pick up our things that we've put away.
All right,
again.
but thanks for giving your opinion. Thanks for giving your opinion. But I mean, listen, that's quite normal what we do. I think we do need to know that in all conversation there's a limited amount of time and there's a frame of reference. And our job as talk show hosts is to moderate on the basis of the frame of reference. Actually, no matter who it is, it could be the ANC today, the issue around Zuma tomorrow, the DA. No matter who it is, and that's what we do. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. Let's move on. There's more calls, but let's get on to the one that we spoke about, Kgalema Motlanthe, early on. I think it is a really fascinating issue, and I made it as part of my That's My Point, where he went house to house and literally was told, like, come on, by an elderly, by a gogo, saying, where are you guys for the last 30 years? And he is very gracious in his natural style, and he said, well, you've given us your marching orders, right? But let's get the thoughts of Sello in Mpumalanga. Sello, hi.
Yes, good evening, Asha. It's Sillo Shaimurule in Bombela, and thank you very much for taking my call.
Much appreciated,
The interaction between the former Deputy President of the ANC and former President of the country, Kgalema Motlanthe, and the senior citizens, it was really interesting and refreshing. And this is what we really want to see in South Africa. You see, one of the fundamental principles of cementing democracy is regular elections. And you cannot just go to elections without interacting with the electorate. So the principle of consultation, mandate and report is what the old ladies were trying to remind the African National Congress, that you are distanced from us. They are not saying you have failed us. They are saying you have disappointed us. If you have disappointed a person, it means a person was looking for the whole hand. You have given that person 3 fingers.
Yeah.
But because there's a space that the African National Congress and government has created between the electorates, they don't understand why the 2 other fingers has not been given. But I can tell you, Ashra, under the African National Congress, the stability in this particular country, even though there are problems of employment, there are problems of service delivery, and South Africa is one of the few countries that gives the housing programs, the free housing.
Okay. Yeah.
I can remember Zimbabwe, Chile, and Venezuela, and Brazil.
All right.
But I'm trying to say, as I underline my input, we are comfortable with the African National Congress, and we hope that the people of this country can give them another mandate.
Okay, you should say you are comfortable, just to be clear about that. And I hear your point about the mandate. I mean, her response, the lady said, you had no direction, even you made mistakes, you don't correct them. Instead, you're busy fighting amongst yourselves. But your point about stability is something others have considered. Thanks for that call, Salo. Salo, thanks for that one. Certainly got us thinking. And further comments on Khaled Mamatlante's engagement house to house with particularly a lady, an elder, a gogo, and what she told him. You can give me your thoughts. Now, there's an issue if we get to the city of Johannesburg, supposedly South Africa's richest province, around the issues of new tariffs that should get households there rather worked up, maybe, right after this.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
Okay, Tracy Ledger, Dr. Tracy Ledger is with me, Public Affairs Research Institute's Head of Energy Transition Program. Dr. Ledger, great chatting to you. You're live on the National Pulse.
Thank you. Hello.
Right, we are talking to you because I understand that there's been proposed prepaid electricity tariffs that will impact the city of Joburg. And I live in the city. What that really means, I don't quite know. So let's find out. What's the status quo and what's happening?
So what happened is the city's released its draft budget for 2024-2025 for people to comment on. And an important part of the budget is what the tariffs are going to be for next year, and the electricity tariffs in particular. So what the city's done is it's decided that going forward, there's going to be 2 categories of residential prepaid tariffs. The one is what they call low use or indigent households, and the other one is what they call high use households. And the difference between the 2 is very important, and it's very important which category you end up in, because if you're in the high use category, you're now going to have to pay a monthly charge of 481 Rand and 50 cents every month before you can buy any units. Plus, you will pay a higher per unit price than the other category. The low-income indigent category is not going to have to pay the 481 Rand 50 cents and will pay a lower fee. The main problem is that nowhere in any of that documentation has the city said how it's going to determine who is going to be in which category. Their use of the term indigent suggests that it will be households that are on the indigent register, but the problem is that the city's got a long history of trying to keep the indigent register as small as possible. There's only about 30,000 households, less than 2% of the total in Joburg, that are on the indigent register. And if it's only indigent registered households that get that, and everybody else has to pay the 481 Rand 50 and the higher fee, it's going to have a devastating impact on poor households.
Okay, that means, whether it's so you're saying, in fact, the relatively wealthy and middle class communities and the majority of South Africans, of the city of Joburg residents, are still likely to pay the 481 because of what you're saying by the very narrow definition of indigent. That would apply to a very small group. Okay.
Definition of indigent. And what that means is that for just for 200 kilowatt hours of electricity every month, which is the smallest amount that a poor household uses, will cost that household nearly 1,000 Rand a month. And there are 700,000 households in Joburg that live below the lower poverty line, that live in abject poverty. It'll cost almost 2 childcare grants to pay for that electricity.
Okay. Now this 481, I mean, clearly for no other reason, it's an obvious income generator without even using a cent of electricity at all, that you have to commit to 481,
yes,
right?
I mean, the basis of it is not a bad idea. It's the network charges that the municipality needs to recover. So if you've got an account, you pay that. The prepaid users have not paid that, even though the prepaid users are actually paying a part of that because they pay a higher cost per unit than the other users do. But the city wants to try and recover more of its costs. The electricity supply in the city operates at a huge loss. There's a massive infrastructure maintenance backlog, and the city is trying to get its money back from residents. In theory, that's not a bad idea, but you cannot punish the poorest households that have hardly got enough money to feed themselves by forcing them to pay this outrageous amount for electricity.
Okay. So you're saying, in fact, that the prepaid users do pay at a higher rate already than those that pay in arrears, right?
Yes.
After the event. Okay. That's interesting. The other one, I saw the story a few weeks ago and immediately was thrown out as a hoax. This 480 odd rands. Like, no, that's a joke. So clearly it's not the case.
No, not at all. It's in the tariff budgets, and the thing is that the city's been quite aggressive. They've issued a press statement to say, it's fake news that everybody will have to pay it. But the point is that they're not saying at all on what basis they're going to decide who falls into which category, which, as far as we're concerned, makes a mockery of the public participation. How can you comment on what your electricity tariff is going to be if the city won't tell you what your electricity tariff is going to be?
I think the overall, and maybe there's the last thing, that the balancing of the budget of a city is always problematic, and particularly a city like Johannesburg, where you're going to have extremely wealthy people, fairly wealthy, middle-class people, and many others struggling, and we can't ignore that reality. But all of that has to fit in to a workable budget. I mean, do you think overall the city has been able to get that right, or they've been off the mark?
Well, I think you can criticize the budget in a lot of ways. If you look at a place like the city of Joburg, which has got a lot of infrastructure priorities that need to be spent on electricity, water, sanitation, roads, it's hard then to justify some of the decisions that the city makes about how to spend its money. I don't really see in that budget the evidence that the city has said, right, these are the things that we have to spend money on, and there isn't money for anything else that might be an excessive expenditure or might look like we don't really need it, whether that's excessive overseas trips or conferences or whatever. I don't see the prioritization of what's most important for the city, and it's always the electricity tariffs that are used to fix the hole in the budget.
Here's the last thing in 30 seconds. In terms of what we've just spoken about now, right, the 480 rand monthly payment, how would you revise it? What would you propose? If not this, then what?
What I would suggest is that the city of Joburg needs to issue a statement to say that every single household in the city of Joburg that has an after-tax income of less than 10,000 rand a month is exempt from that prepaid charge.
Okay, and that's where we leave it. Thank you for your time. Dr. Tracy Ledger, the Public Affairs Research Institute's Head of Energy Transition Program. It's a big issue. We need energy. We need money. We don't have enough money. We have to pay. The city doesn't have enough money. They need to charge. How do we get all of that right? There's rich, there's poor, there's not so rich, there's not so poor. What's the management or the balancing act of all of that? Let's get to the news headlines now. Just gone 4:30 with Madupi.
Thank you very much, Ashraf, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines, the Judicial Services Commission has decided not to accept the recommendations of the Judicial Conduct Committee to refer 4 complaints against Gauteng Judge President Dustin Mlambo for investigation by a tribunal. A report by the Competition Commission shows that prices on various food items are beginning to come down despite various challenges, and several defense officials in Gaza say Israel has struck 2 areas in the southern city of Rafah where the IDF has told civilians to leave. Those are your headlines. A full update with Greg at 5.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Not a bad amount of volume around Gauteng for the motoring public this afternoon, somewhere between moderate and heavy. It's not as bad as it could be, so you'll take that. The Mike 1, though, is a bit of a standout, coming up from Parktown through Houghton, Melrose, up towards the Marlborough Drive exit. If you're on your way out from Joburg through Santa towards Woodmead, there is some queuing pressure there. R21, heavy both ways around the lane restrictions at Clayville. That's heading to Pretoria, and of course heading down for flight connections at the airport. Durban today, the Esplanade leaving the city centre along the Bay Area there. That's quite a heavy backlog. If you're trying to get out towards the M4 Southern Freeway, an unusual backlog coming out of central Durban today. Cape Town side, Table View, a nightmare getting out of this morning. It's all normalised getting back in today, this afternoon. There are some traffic lights down there, Malabongwe at the N7 at Dunoon, so just be careful getting through that junction. And Mike Pienaar Boulevard's quite a heavy queue as you line up from the Tinny Meyer side on your way through towards Frans Conradi. As if you're trying to get to the N1 or Yip de Jager Drive, that section of Mike Pienaar going north is quite slow. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Doming Kapele.
Alrighty, let's start things off with football this hour. Orlando Pirates have had their participation in the CAF Inter-Club tournament for next season confirmed, but coach Jose Rivero wants the Champions League. With both the Buccaneers and Mamelodi Sundowns through to the Nedbank Cup final, it means that the Soweto Giants will, at the very least, play in the Confederations Cup, even if they finish outside the top three in the DStv Premiership. However, Rivero says that's not an option as they race with Stellenbosch for the runners-up spot behind title holders Sundowns.
We want to be in the second position in the end of the season, and to make it possible, we know that we have to win every point. Stellenbosch is doing well. They are in a good moment of form and is pushing us also to the limit to make sure that we don't fail, that we don't have a bad day. We cannot have a bad day from now until the end of the season.
Elsewhere, a referee will wear a video camera for the first time in a Premier League game during this evening's match between Crystal Palace and Manchester United. Jared Gillett will use a head-mounted device called a ref cam, although the footage will not be broadcast live. The video will be used in a one-off program providing insight into officiating in the Premier League. In February, Bundesliga referee Daniel Schalger won a camera and microphone, and that footage was also used for a program called Referees Mic'd Up Bundesliga. Last year, Premier League referee Rob Jones wore a camera for the 2023 Summer Series match between Chelsea and Brighton in Philadelphia. Then in rugby table toppers, Glasgow Warriors are coming to South Africa full of confidence that they can score 2 wins on the Highveld and up their chances of keeping their spot at the summit of the United Rugby Championship log. 2 weeks ago, they handily beat Zebre 49 in Parma and leapfrogged Leinster, and now they face one of the toughest tests when they head to Loftus Versfeld to face the Bulls at altitude, with the home side intent in grabbing a home victory to get themselves a chance of being in the top 2 at the end of regulation play. Really wishing Bulls to do well in this match. I'll definitely be down at Loftus. Then in cricket, India will be counting on Ravindra Jadeja's all-round brilliance in the T20 World Cup in June. The 35-year-old is India's premier spin bowling all-rounder and will be expected to play a key role in the T20 showpiece in the United States and West Indies, where the ball is likely to turn. Against Punjab in the IPL, Jadeja top scored for Chennai with a breezy 43 and then returned to claim 3 for 20 to help the defending champions climb to 3rd place after the 6th win in 11 matches. And rounding things up with the business of sport today, looking at the top highest paid South African footballers abroad, starting off with Njabulo Blom, who used to play for Kaizer Chiefs. Now he plays for St. Louis in the MLS. He earns around 4.6 million rand annually. Lebo Mutiba, who is in France, earns 14 million rand per year. Percy Tau, who is playing for Al Ahly, earns around 19.6 million rand a year, and Lyle Foster, who plays for Burnley in the Premier League, earns 21.6 million rand annually.
Okay, so over 2 million, about 2 million a month, some of them, 24 million and even more.
Yeah, remember, especially in the Premier League, they earn like per week.
I know.
Sure. People make money out there.
Should have become a footballer. Yeah.
But that's it. It's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in at the next hour. For SAFM Sport, I'm Doming Kapele.
SABC Sport is proud to bring you the best polo match on television screens. Watch the South African national polo teams take on the best from around the world. First on the annual fixture is the eagerly awaited international battle at the Nedbank International Polo on Saturday, 11 May 2024 from 1:30 p.m. Watch live on SABC Sport as Argentina, the best of the Americas, face off with South Africa, the best of Africa. Catch the build-up, the international match, and the prize-giving ceremony on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, let's get to the markets now with Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, good chatting to you. It's a Monday, so let's get to East Platts firstly. Business carries on, right?
Yeah, it is on. Yeah, the guys are the PJM and Chrome miner in South Africa with their headquarters in Vancouver. That's Canada. And good afternoon to you and to the listeners. East Platts revenue going up by 98.3%. Gross margin improved, Ashraf, by 107% to 29.5%. Operating income up 493%. And Ashraf, almost 96% of the revenue is from Chrome concentrate sales. And the retreatment project comes to an end, so their focus is going to be to ramp up the underground tonnages in the Zenfontein underground section at the Crocodile River mine.
All right, then you have some the news on local and global markets?
Yes, I mean, for last week, we've seen that the JC was almost flat. The Rand fell to 0.7%. Oil prices were down 7%. Gold was down 1.4%. And Ashraf, weaker than expected U.S. payroll data revived bets on Federal Reserve's interest rate cuts. But the European Central Bank appear likely to lower borrowing costs before the U.S. Central Bank. And Russia's April PMI for services sector fell to 50.5% from 51.4% in March. And while Eurozone PMI showed business activity expanded, jumping to 51.7% for April from 50.3% in March. And the tentative signs that we've been seeing that the U.S. labor market is cooling were welcomed by bond traders, though that's only the first part of what's needed to fire up the rally they have been hoping for this year, as market participants cautiously increase bets on policy easing this year, but inflation remains sticky and could limit what the Fed can do, which in turn could keep bonds in their recent ranges. Oil continues to heat up after Saudi Arabia hiked June crude prices, and as the prospect of a Gaza ceasefire deal appeared slim, we see Brent crude is up 0.8% at $83 a barrel, and fears of higher for longer rates and slowing safe haven demand were the biggest drags when it comes to gold in recent sessions. But now the yellow metal is getting some relief, and that is from a drop in the dollar as bets increase for a September rate cut. And among industrial metals, copper is moving back towards a 2-year high, and it is benefiting from hopes of improved demand coming out of China. Remember, Ashraf, China is a top importer when it comes to copper, and we've seen gold is up 1.1% at 2,327, but platinum is down 0.7% at 959. The DAX is up 0.8%, CAC up 0.5%, FTSE is closed for holiday. The Dow is up 0.4%, S&P is up 0.6%, with the JSE up 0.7%, and our resources are doing most of the heavy lifting, up 2%, financials up 0.4%, industrials up 0.1%, and the rand firmed almost 0.6% against the US dollar. Is now trading at 18.38 and 23.13 to the pound and 19.82 to the euro.
And that's where we shall leave it, Makwe. We're going to talk tomorrow, yeah?
Pleasure. You keep well.
Okay, that's it. That's the Mark Ware, bringing us the marketing news every single day around at this time, right? In fact, what we'll do is we're going to chat just now, not quite now, in a few minutes' time, as part of our Election Watch feature, get another take from Kagiso Trust in part of their Remember Me campaign. But let's get some calls and WhatsApp notes. In fact, we're going to get some WhatsApp voice notes first up here. Let me just see that. I'm just trying to pick it up here in terms of what's come through. Okay, here's a question: genocide versus Holocaust. Interesting one.
Afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, if the Jews can commemorate the Holocaust, they must also allow the Palestinians to commemorate the genocide by Israelites one day. They must allow that. They must not say people must not talk about genocide. They are in their right, as they are also in their right to commemorate the Holocaust. Norman from Brixton.
Okay, got that, Norman. There's another one on, politician. In fact, here's another one on October 7th. Let me just pick up on that one. Sorry, it's a bit slow opening up here. Here's another.
Hi, Ashraf, Joe from Durban. Why get bogged down in semantics? Let's just then go by the numbers. Firstly, on October 7th, one has been debunked clearly, even by Israeli defense spokesmen themselves, is that there were no beheading of babies, raping of women. The Israeli army killed its own people, shot them from helicopters. That's fact. It's not a matter of opinion. As for whether this one or that one is genocide, it's a matter of the numbers. Since October the 7th, almost 40,000 people have been massacred. The vast majority of them, women, children, and innocent men, in their homes, in their flats, in their school grounds. So the distraction and the moving away from the facts by all the semantics on genocide by the supporters of Zionism and Israel is just that's what it is, distraction.
Well, I hear you, but of course, from my point of view, in terms of the interview, we had to stay with the definitions because that was the basis of the conversation. But I hear what you're saying about the numbers, right? There's another comment on the conversation I had with Roland Marx earlier on.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. The Zionist lady must stop abusing our national radio. She phones almost every day talking about Israel is being attacked. Everybody knows what's happening. We can see for ourselves what's happening in Palestine. She doesn't have to come here and try to convince us to believe her narrative. Israel has committed genocide. That's it. That's what we can see with our own eyes. That's what we know. Every day she phones here and talking about Israel has done nothing wrong. Israel is talking about Hamas. Why is Hamas attacking Israel? Because they are defending themselves from Israel.
All right. So some clarity. I'm not sure who you're referring to that way. I mean, in the case of the person I spoke to earlier, Roland Marx, she's not a caller every day. She's the spokesperson for the South African Zionist Federation. In fact, we invited her as a guest on the basis of their call today, linking the fact that the word genocide must not be used. And you know what? The channel or the station, we have diverse opinions, and we can't take it for granted that everybody has one opinion, and that's it. We have diversity, absolutely. Let's see if I just want to check if I've got some more time, maybe for one or two more calls. In fact, what we'll try and do that just after the next conversation, which we're going to have around the daily feature around building up to the elections, which is called Election Watch.
This Election Watch feature is brought to you by Kagiso Trust. Follow the #RememberMe initiative.
Right, with me is Ghulam Abubakar, who's one of the trustees of the Kagiso Trust. Ghulam, good chatting to you. Thanks for your time.
Pleasure, Ashraf.
Thank you.
Good chatting to you.
Much appreciated. Now, we've been running your campaign, #RememberMe, and playing on the history of people who've played such an important role in dismantling apartheid, right? And your brief history, I understand you were also part of the formation of the UDF, right?
That's right. I worked in the UDF on the Western Cape largely with people like Trevor Manuel, Cheryl Carolus, but also nationally with people like Murphy Morobi, Vali Musa, Eric Malobi, who in a sense intersect both Kakiso Trust and the UDF and NECC.
Mm-hmm. And therefore, to then swing into the issue of this campaign, this Remember Me campaign that we've been running, and Kagiso Trust being a sponsor of the whole election watch feature throughout this build-up to the elections, right? Why do you think it's that important?
Well, this election actually is going to be one of the most crucial ones that we've had in the past 30 years. And the reason for that is there are a couple of worrying trends. One of the worrying trends is that the declining participation by our people in successive national elections. And a particular concern is the decreasing trend of young people participating in general elections. That's very worrying, especially if you take into account what a heroic role our young people have played in getting change in this country. So that's our main concern. And we put in a large amount of money to assist with voter education, largely to try and encourage young people to take part in the elections.
So is it a case of younger people should take part, or all of us should take part? I mean, clearly the answer would be obviously all, but I mean, your specific focus is younger people, right?
That's right. I mean, that we want participation from all sectors of our people, but the worrying trend, beside the general declining trend, is a more serious declining trend by young people. So we want to, in a sense, encourage more young people to take part.
And therefore, not just this year now, and yes, I mean, Kagiso Trust is certainly supported this year, but even in the past, does it work? I mean, the level of support, the level of reminders, the level of education to the younger people that you have to vote, and it's that important?
That's right. I mean, our communication campaign will have a focus on that, but also, in this particular election, already people are talking about the large number of political parties that want to participate. So we're going to have a very complicated ballot paper with large number of parties. Then in this particular election, we also have, for the first time, independents who are allowed to stand for election to the national parliament. That means that unlike in the past where we had two ballot papers, here people who are going to vote will be confronted with three different ballot papers on with the cross.
And does it matter for you, notwithstanding your own, struggle background, like which parties they vote for? Is it just more important that they must vote?
Definitely. I mean, the emphasis of Kakiso Trust is that people need to take part actively in the elections rather than Kakiso Trust indicating or suggesting who you should vote for. More generally, I mean, we would like people who vote to understand the different parties who are contesting the election. What does their election manifesto say? Or does those manifesto relate to the key problems confronting this nation? For example, the large unemployment issue, or does that political party's program for economic development make sense? So those are the issues we feel are important. Yeah, so we think familiarizing yourself with policy manifestos would be very important.
What do you tell people in like kind of years so many? It's like, we vote every time, every 5 years. I made the point at the beginning of the program that for a person, they can only see as far as their eyes can see. And if their eyes can only see down the street in their community, they don't see anything else. And if they don't see their community changing in 30 years, then they are terribly disillusioned with their state of affairs, but also with the vehicle to make change, which is the elections, if they don't see that change.
Okay, there are two things one need to take into account when deciding who you're going to vote for. I mean, obviously, the changes that have taken place in this country over 30 years have been quite dramatic. But if you look at over the last 5 years, we know that things have not been easy. To some extent, we could say the internal reasons for it, but a lot of them are largely global. I mean, to give you just one example, South Africa is still largely a mining economy. And when there's a bigger demand for the commodities we produce, like iron ore, platinum, manganese, etc., then our mining exports raise a lot of revenue. So that's like determined by what the global economic conditions are. And over the last 5 or 10 years, the global economic conditions haven't been very good. So as a result of that, we know the economy hasn't been growing as rapidly as you would like. Also, in 2020, we had this huge pandemic, COVID, and we know it's only now we can say the employment levels in the country have reached the level of employment that existed in 2019, 2020.
Yeah, very, very important.
Not as a result of anything the government did.
Yeah. And lastly, to go back to the hashtag Remember Me campaign that Kagiso Trust is very much a part of, right? What do you feel about that campaign whereby Kagiso Trust has highlighted individuals, iconic individuals like Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Reverend Frank Chikani, and we can go on to many others that we've mentioned in the past, and say, look at what they've done and their efforts in fighting to dismantle apartheid. That's why remember me or remember them when deciding to vote or not to vote. What do you feel about the Remember Me campaign's ability to impact on us making a decision to actually go out and vote by reflecting on who did what in the past?
I think that's extremely important. I mean, I know that there've been a lot of talk about, for example, the contribution made by our heroes of the past, from Mr. Nelson Mandela to people like Bayes Nodi or Eric Malobi. I mean, a lot of them are deceased, but their contribution to our struggle has been not only heroic, their sacrifices were huge if you consider how long they were banned for, etc. So my feeling is, in remembering our past leaders, we need to ensure, especially the youth, we begin to generate a lot more new leaders who are able to take their place in society.
And maybe we should remember them sometime soon. I think that's a point well made and a challenge for all of us. Ghulam Abu Bakr, Kagiso Trust trustee there, thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
Pleasure, Ashraf.
And
you have a good evening.
Much appreciated. And they've got best wishes for that hashtag Remember Me campaign. Check it out, besides what we're doing here, on all social media platforms as well. Hashtag Remember Me.
This Election Watch feature was brought to you by Kagiso Trust. Follow the hashtag Remember Me initiative. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Okay, let's get further calls on a range of issues. First up on genocide and intent again, Mako Sonke from Soweto High.
Yes, sir. Just a clarity-seeking question. I just want to understand that if genocide has to do with intent and eliminating the entire nation, why all this time they've been this tension between Israel and Palestine and stuff like that? Why didn't they pursue that? Why didn't they get rid of that nation, the Palestine, and then they only did it when Hamas attacked them?
Are you saying so the act has to follow the intention?
I'm just thinking. I just need the clarity because I'm battling to make sense of this whole situation to be called genocide, because for them, what they were supposed to do to make sure that those people they don't attack them again. They were not supposed to pursue the people who attacked them, to make sure that they don't pursue. Because for me, it's like a year when they say there's a concern in terms of what happened that particular time. But now the genocide, it seems like an extreme, given the sense that this fight has been happening for a very long time. If they were intending to do that, and the fact that IDC, it's got that mighty army that can actually do that can actually take on the
so you're saying why didn't they
didn't do that all this time?
Okay, got that. It's an interesting point. Thank you for that call. I mean, here's the point. He's saying if there's an intent, and I mean both parties have said so many different things, that if Hamas has had an intent at some stage to destroy Israel for whatever reason that we've discussed lots of times, is the intent alone good enough, or does an action have to follow? And in this case here, with the Israelis, in terms of their defense of what happened October 7th, then did they have an intent and then actually went about destroying people? And is that therefore genocide? I mean, you can do your own studies and tell me what you make of that one, right? We'll get further thoughts on that too. Let's talk about the DA advert. Percy in Limpopo, hi.
No, thank you very much. I think we should just accept that the multi-party charter has always brought in mechanism to want to subvert the strength of the ANC. And the strength of this organization is on the ground. And the propaganda that they are talking about to want to weaken will not find the light of the day because it's about propaganda to discourage the people to vote ANC. And I
don't know about propaganda. I mean, Percy, to be fair, look, all parties, including the ANC, their job at this point in time is to communicate a message to me and to you to vote for them. And that applies to every single party. And they use certain tools. The question we're talking about now is the advert. Has the advert worked for the DA or not in terms of communicating a message?
It might not have achieved its objective. The reason why I'm saying so it is because when the ANC issues our statement, it does not talk about other parties. It talks about itself. And we should be able to ask ourselves question why these parties are after the ANC in terms of their messaging.
I think the answer is
disparate move.
Okay, Percy got that. Thanks for that call. I think the answer is obvious. The ANC will talk about themselves because they're the government. Every other party, by nature, would compare what they can do versus the incumbent. They're the challengers, and that applies to all the parties. Okay, right. Hassan in Joburg, hi.
Hi, Ashraf. I liked your Palestinian guest's comments about Raphael Lemkin, from the Lemkin Institute, the guy who helped coin the phrase genocide or the concept. In fact, Lemkin's work, his studies in 1944, through a book, Axis Rule in Occupied Europe, included a range of other genocidal acts which influenced him to say that the human condition is such that people will commit genocides in their lifetime. After this year, there'll be more and more. So he wanted to bring about this concept that genocide had to be stopped, and he worked tirelessly to introduce the concept. But it was never only for the Jewish people. As a Polish Jew, he was progressive enough to see beyond the particular, to realize this is part of the human condition.
Point taken. And therefore, quickly we're on to news time. The South African Zionist Federation's position that we should refrain from using the word genocide. Your thoughts?
He's totally out of order because he believes that genocide was a crime against humanity as a whole, and required a collective response from the international community, not a particular crime against a particular set of people.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it. Hassan, thanks for that call again. We'll pick up further comments. In fact, more on the DA adverts and campaign in a moment or two after the news, in fact. But before we get to news time, Archbishop Desmond Tutu was vilified by the apartheid government and had his passport confiscated. But he kept struggling for freedom, and after voting in the first democratic election in 1994, he said it felt so good. It was like falling in love, right? And I'm smiling as I say that. On May the 29th, the Kagiso Trust's #RememberMe initiative encourages South Africans to honor Tutu's memory by exercising the right he fought so hard for, the right to vote. #RememberMe. All right, let's get to the news now. Here's Madupi.
JSC will not act on Mlambo complaints, and Israel hits targets in Rafah. Good afternoon, I'm Greg Gross with your news. Madupi has left the building. The Judicial Service Commissions decided not to accept the recommendations of the Judicial Conduct Committee, the JCC, to refer 4 complaints against the Gauteng Judge President Dunstan Mlambo for investigation by a tribunal. In March this year, the JCC Appeals Committee recommended that he should be probed on allegations that he lied to the Justice Minister and Parliament over a dispute with advocate Anthony Brink. Brink launched an appeal against an earlier decision which dismissed his complaints against Mlambo for lack of substance. Kani Mapanga reports.
At the time the recommendation was made, the JCC Appeals Committee noted a number of unanswered questions and concluded that the option open to the committee is that the complaints be investigated by a tribunal. A statement by the JSC, however, reveals that the body which is tasked with investigating complaints about judicial officers found that there is no prima facie evidence to substantiate the allegations against the top judge of the Gauteng division. Kani Mapanga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Residents of George in the Western Cape are in shock following the collapse of a building under construction. Emergency services are on the scene, where it's believed that dozens of workers have been trapped underneath the rubble. Local resident Annika Nell.
Whilst we were busy working in our office building, we just felt this tremor that felt like a small earthquake, and somebody came in and said there's this huge cloud of smoke outside. Almost 3/4 of the office went outside to go and see what's going on, and we could see clearly that the building that they were busy constructing a couple of 100 meters away from where we are wasn't there anymore.
The Essential Food Price Monitoring Report by the Competition Commission shows that prices on various food items are beginning to come down despite various challenges. These include persistent load shedding, rail and ports constraints and global supply disruptions. Economist at the Competition Commission, Kagiso Zwane.
The producer price of eggs has started coming down, and there has been a slower transmission at the retail level, but it is still present. And this might indicate a period where retailers are also building some of their margins, since the spreads imply that those might have been sacrificed in the avian flu outbreak period. On the next panel is the producer to retail spreads for frozen chicken. We see that in line with previous trends, the retail spread for chicken continues to fall. This is despite an increase in producer prices that came through last year.
The Mangaung Metro in the Free State has warned residents to expect a 36-hour water emergency shutdown on Wednesday. The Metro says the water shutdown for repairs will affect areas including Mafora, Rocklands, Ipopeng and Bergman Square. They say they'll be replacing valves and meters on the Long Bridge takeoff following the vandalism of the pipelines. Further afield now, several defense officials in Gaza say Israel has struck 2 areas in the southern city of Rafah where the Israeli Defense Forces told civilians to leave. BBC's Yolande Nell has more.
Palestinians quickly packed up their possessions and crammed into cars and onto donkey carts after Israeli flyers began dropping, instructing them to leave. The Israeli military is directing them to 2 tent cities, which Gazans say are already crowded with displaced people. An Israeli army spokesman said that the operation planned in eastern Rafah was of a limited scope, but a Hamas official said that the evacuation orders, which have already been followed by Israeli airstrikes, were a dangerous escalation. Israel has said that victory over Hamas in Gaza is impossible without taking Rafah.
Top story, the Judicial Service Commission has decided not to accept the recommendations of the JCC to refer 4 complaints against the Gauteng Judge President for investigation by tribunal. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khos.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Nadal to make Rome return against qualifier, and Van Dijk wants to be part of Liverpool transition. I'll have more on this at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon, south of Joburg. The South Rand Road, Rand Airport Road option remains closed for through traffic between Tulisa Park and Germiston. It's still closed after protesting there this morning. It will be a longer way to complete that journey. A lot of traffic having to travel down south through the Alberton region. The Mike 1 quite slow today as you come up from the Parktown area through Houghton on your way towards Woodmead. The N1 South is all backed up down towards the Winnie Mandela off-ramp. And if you're driving north up through Midrand, bit of traffic as far as the New Road exit on your way to Pretoria. Also the R21, quite heavy both ways around the lane restrictions just north of Olifantsfontein at Clayville. That's a hold up towards Pretoria and a hold up towards the airport as well. Durban's Victoria Embankment leaving the CBD out towards the Southern Freeway connection. That's quite slow. Higginson Highway going to Chatsworth looking backed up. And Cape Town today, the M5 going south slow from the Coburg interchange all the way down to the Racecourse Road exit in Kenilworth. And there's a bit of pressure on the N2 queuing up passing the airport runway towards the R300. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
Mama Kitty, I heard Rand Water talking on the radio about how dangerous it is for people to encroach on their pipeline servitude.
Yes, those high-pressure Rand Water pipelines are under the ground distributing megalitres of water. When people build on top of the pipeline, Rand Water is unable to conduct maintenance on the pipeline, which has a negative impact on water provision. Pipelines can burst without warning. People could get seriously injured or worse.
Yes, people can die from a bursting pipe. That is why people need to understand that Rand Water servitude is where a Rand Water pipeline pipeline is located. If we build our houses or businesses on a Rand water servitude, then we are encroaching on that servitude. They say if communities want to know whether they have encroached over servitudes, they should look for the Rand water beacons.
The beacons indicate the presence of Rand water pipelines under the ground. They're rectangular, made of concrete, are painted either white or blue, and have the Rand water logo on them.
Let's take a walk around our area to see if there are any Rand water beacons so that we can also tell the neighbors.
Rand Water, celebrating 120 years of existence and still finding new ways to provide clean, portable bulk water.
Getting more money into your pockets has never been this simple and exciting. With SABC's new Simple Watch and Win game show, you can get more Zaga in your pockets. Catch more Zaga every weekday on SABC 1 at 9 p.m. You could win your share of 50,000 Rand. All you have to do to win is give the correct answer for the day. Just dial *120 *332# to register and play. The cost is R1.50 per minute. You could win big with more Zaga. Only on SABC 1.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
I was reminded yesterday when I bumped into someone to say, Ashraf, you know what, you've been hosting the show, The National Pulse, for a month, and it's amazing between myself and my production team of Temba and Keys and Fusani. Yeah, molding a whole new team together for a month, and it's been great so far. The National Pulse. I'm so glad that you're listening into the show, and do use that hashtag, The National Pulse. If you're posting on the X platform, on Twitter, tagging SFM Radio and myself, and do the same thing on the various, on Facebook as well. Lots more to talk about. We'll look at two takes around the DA issue that's been dominating headlines all day today. One from a legal perspective of that flag burning, and then the other strictly from a brand communication perspective. So we'll chat to Tebe Kalafeng later on from a brand point of view. We're also getting calls, and we've had many and further opinions about the South African Zionist Federation call for the phrase or the word genocide not to be used. And if we get a chance, we'll take some further calls on that, as well as your WhatsApps. And you know that you can voice note or text 0614104107. Ideally, keep the voice notes to 30 seconds, would appreciate it. But to call in 086 000 2032. Right, now earlier on, I had a chat with Rolene Marks, the spokesperson for the South African Zionist Federation, and we spoke around the issues of the definition of the word or the phrase genocide, and this is what she said.
If you think you are going to bait me into Israel is committing a genocide, we are not committing a genocide. That accusation of genocide has been refuted, not only by Israel, but by our allies, Germany, who knows a lot more about genocide, especially on a day like today, than many human rights organizations who have yet to condemn the atrocities of the 7th of October, who have yet to acknowledge the rape of the women and the girls, and yet still the hostages of the 7th of October, who have yet to call for the unconditional release of the hostages, many of them who are being held in appalling conditions.
Okay.
Do we want a war with the people of Gaza? No, we don't.
No, Rolene,
but
you are giving...
This is what must enforce on both of us on the 7th of October.
Right. Are you done now, Rolene? Because you're giving commentary beyond what I asked you. I've only asked you one question. That's all, which is...
I gave you an answer.
I've asked you on the issue of the word genocide. I'm not going to give you the
answer you want, Ashraf.
No, you don't know what I want. You don't know what I want. I've only asked you the question on the issue of genocide that you wish South Africans and the world not to use. What is your plan of action to ensure that South Africa does not use that word? What I'm not talking about is anything that's happened before that. We're not even discussing that right now. It's you who's chosen to do that. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to say, in terms of your presentation today, or your request not to have the word genocide being called genocide, right? What then is your plan, and why do you think it should not be called genocide in the light of many people who believe 30,000 plus an annihilation of a community beyond just Hamas is what they would call genocide, and many human rights organizations in South Africa and the world? And that's all I want to know. Thank you. You can go ahead.
We have ably demonstrated, as we did in the International Court of Justice, as we have today with leaflets, SMSs, a humanitarian zone, humanitarian aid, and a look at the correct numbers of people who have been killed as a result of this war. It is not a genocide. We call on the South African government and South African human rights organizations to stop co-opting the word genocide to push their agenda against the state of Israel. South Africa has aligned itself with Iran. Iran has called repeatedly for the annihilation of the Jewish state.
That's the voice of Roldine Marks, right? You can check out, listen to the podcast that we did as well earlier on right now. We then got further comment. We spoke to Saleh Hijazi, who was the apartheid-free policy coordinator with the BDS movement, and again asked him something similar about the definition of genocide according to him.
So look, it's a codified in international law. Genocide is a crime that is where you seek the end of a people as such. So a group is taking action to eliminate another group in whole or in part. So it's a crime of one group over another. In this context, it's a crime by the colonizers, the Israelis against the indigenous Palestinians.
Right, so that's two takes on that issue. Again, if we have a chance, we'll take further calls. But you can also, if you can't call, you can certainly tweet us. Just use that hashtag, The National Pulse. Right, let's talk about the DA's campaign, the ad campaign that is, from a legal perspective, right after this.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
So, did you see that DA advert? And what do you make of the advert? But what do you make of the image of a burning South African flag within the context of that advert? So let's find out about it, staying with the legal aspect for now. We'll chat about the brand communication with Tebe Kalafeng after this. But first up, Advocate Madidima Monia, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Good evening, and good evening to your listeners.
Okay, so I'm certainly not talking about the merits and the quality of the messaging in the advert. I'm talking strictly in terms of the flag burning. What do you make of it?
Look, I think it's like a complex matter. Firstly, it's a constitutional issue in the sense that the flag is actually prescribed in Schedule 1 of our Constitution. So if you do anything to the national flag, you are effectively undermining the Constitution, regardless of whether that would constitute an offense or not. Secondly, the flag is regulated by what we call the Heraldry Act. It's a little unknown piece of legislation. The first was done in 1935, then 1963, and then it was amended in 2001. This act makes provision for the registration of some of the national symbols like the coat of arms and the flag. And it is registered in terms of that. And the Act does provide for penalties for people who sort of disrespect these national symbols like the national flag and the coat of arms. Mm-hmm. But in addition to that, you have a government gazette issued by the presidency, which deals with, and I think the particular section is 15 of the regulations, which says the national flag must at all times be treated with dignity and respect, you know. Mm-hmm. Now, and that then raises the question whether anybody, particularly a political party represented in government and an aspirant government, is doing justice to itself and to the nation by conducting itself in a manner which is disrespectful. Mm-hmm. But if you oppose that with the Supreme Court of Appeal judgment regarding the old flag, which the court found to be, you know, some form of harassment and hate speech and discrimination, you may think that these conduct borders along the lines of disrespecting at least the majority. You know, I always say that I think the DA becomes toxic because every time they want to fight the ANC, they drag the entire nation into that fight as if everybody's a member of the ANC.
Yeah, but I mean, look, that's the DA's prerogative, and it's up to you and me to be convinced by that, right? So if we stay with the issue of literally of the flag part of it, So are you saying that their actions, and remember it's an advert, right? Are their actions, are they illegal, firstly? The burning of the flag?
Well, as I said, they are not in accordance with the Constitution. I mean, illegal is a bit of a technical way.
Okay.
You know?
What's the difference between illegal or legal versus not in accordance with the Constitution?
Illegal could mean prohibited by law. It could mean an offense, a criminal offense, you know?
Okay. But you do agree... all right. You agree
Yes.
that it's not in the spirit of let's say, the country or nation building. That means depicting a flag that's burning is not in good spirit. I mean, you'd agree with that?
Well, yeah, that's the point I'm making, that, you know, the flag, Ashraf, represents all of us. It doesn't represent members of the EFF or DA or ANC. It represents the entire nation. You know? But we also must understand that our nation has got its own classes, you know. There are groups, and we know we are divided. And part of the objective of the Constitution is national reconciliation. So there are constitutional sensitivities. It's not just political sensitivities. It's constitutional sensitivities. If you go to our preamble, what is the objective of our Constitution and what is expected of all role players in our constitutional and political scheme?
Now, early on, I had a chat with the spokesperson of the DA. I mean, he made the point, which I think is interesting, that, you know, they didn't really burn a flag. It's symbolical of, in this case here, the harm that's been done to the country by those that are in charge, okay, referring to the ruling party. So it is symbolical, and that's what adverts really are. They're symbolical. They depict something. They're not the reality. Can we not see the difference?
Well, if you look at this concept globally, it's called desecration, né? And it also includes how you represent or misrepresent a national symbol, you know. But we must correct the DA's thinking. The national flag is the South African flag. It's not the ANC flag. If they have a problem with the ANC, they must do that to the ANC flag, not to the national flag. I think there's a big difference between
So if they burn the ANC flag and you know, symbols, that would be more accurate in terms of their opposition to poor service delivery is the way they perceive it. Is that what you're saying? Yeah?
Well, yeah, if that is what they want to project. But I am saying the national flag belongs to the republic, not to a political party.
Okay, lastly, is there any recourse? I mean, if somebody is offended enough about this, right, besides just you know, letting off steam, could they do anything about it?
Yes, I think you could go to Section 22 of the Heraldry Act, because it makes provision for this type of situations where somebody sort of misuses a registered representation. Now, the flag is a registered representation. Remember, this flag was actually developed by the Heraldry Department, which is an entity within the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. You know, it is actually a registered representation. So if you sort of misuse it or misrepresent it, or you basically conduct yourself in contravention to the government gazette instructions on the use of the flag, there could be consequences, legal consequences.
All right. That's where we will leave it. Appreciate your input, your legal analysis on this issue. And that's Modidima Mania providing that, saying, you know, it's maybe not in the spirit of the Constitution. So what do you make of that DA advert and the DA campaign? Well, here's the other thing to consider, right? Does the actual campaign work? There's massive talkability around the advert today, isn't it? So top of mind, like we talk about the MK that's dominated the headlines in the last few weeks, has the DA ensured that they are top of mind, top of discussion, top of the agenda all day today? Surely they are, isn't it? But does it work to translate into you being convinced enough to vote for them because of what that advert reflects in terms of how they see the state of our nation, the national pulse, so to speak? We'll chat to Tebe Kalafeng after this.
I want to talk to this girl, but I'm shy, bro.
Come on, go talk to her, bro. It's a masquerade party. Plus, you know, the ladies love a man with a bit of mystery. Don't worry, we got you.
Hey, girl.
I just want to know who's behind that mess. From the moment I saw you, you stole my heart. Can I please get your number, babe? And I'll take you out. I promise to love you
forever and this our vow.
I'll show you my face if you show me yours.
Let's face it, when you channel your inner superstar, every moment turns into a musical. Catch The Masked Singer SA, Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. and see who's hiding behind the mask. Channel a better you with S3. S3, open up.
Any person aggrieved by any political advertisement or political election broadcast that is broadcast by SAFM may lodge a complaint within 5 days from broadcast with the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA. To lodge your complaint, please contact ICASA's Compliance Department via telephone number on 012 568 3233. That's 012 568 3233. Or email broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. That's broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. Alternatively, complaintsccc@icasa.org.za. That's complaintsccc@icasa.org.za.
Right, we'll chat to Tebe Kalafeng in a few minutes' time. But remember this, Archbishop Desmond Tutu was vilified by the apartheid government and had his passport confiscated. But he kept struggling for freedom, and after voting in the very first democratic election in 1994, well, he said, it felt so good it was like falling in love. On May the 29th, the Kagiso Trust's Remember Me initiative encourages South Africans to honour Tutu's memory by exercising the right he fought so hard for. The right to vote. #Remember Me.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, we're going to get to Tebe Kalafeng in just a moment or so. I want to check if we've got him connected. In fact, I think we do have him here. Okay, so Tebe Kalafeng is head of the Brand Leadership Group and Brand Africa as well. Tebe, as always, let's talk marketing and branding and brand communications. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Right, now, we're not going to ask you to talk politics. Let's talk about brand communication. You saw the DA advert, right?
Horrible.
Okay, you've answered the question. Why horrible?
Well, I think it's in bad taste. It's in bad taste because the flag of the Republic of South Africa is the one unifying symbol. It is the one symbol of all that is beyond politics. It doesn't say ANC, it doesn't say EFF, or any one of the other parties, or even DA. It belongs to all South Africans. And in the 30th year of the anniversary of the celebration of the first 30 years of the democratic South Africa, the last thing you wanted to see is the desecration of the one symbol that unites us, and that should be beyond politics.
Now you see, I had a chat with Solly Malaitsi from the DA, and I hear what you're saying. He's suggesting that yes, it's a symbol, but it's a symbol that shows you that the real desecration, and now I'm paraphrasing now, but the real desecration has come from those that govern the country right now. And they've actually harmed the flag more than anybody else. And they've showed you what has happened because of their actions. And that's why you need the DA. Does that not make sense?
No, it doesn't make sense, because to the naked eye, to the ordinary person, they see a flag of South Africa burning, and they see the burning being associated with the Democratic Alliance, who is putting forward this message. So no amount of explanation works to the simple mind, and we are all simple minds. And the simple mind during elections, we look at symbols and we look at colors, and we see the blue party burning the one symbol called the Republic of South Africa's flag, which is the brand that belongs to all of us. So to all of us, we see the harming of the one symbol, the desecration, the destruction, the violation of the singular symbol that says South Africa 30 years later, you are still standing, despite all your challenges.
Now the DA's position, I mean, as it stands, is they stand by the advert. They're quite happy that what's come through is exactly the type of communication they wanted to be communicated. Well, in this case, to the simple mind, to borrow your words, or maybe to the more sophisticated mind. Does that surprise you that the DA is very clear that they're fine with that?
Well, it's unfortunate that the DA has got a few own goals over the last couple of years, and because the biggest challenge that the DA faces is that they have demonstrated over the last couple of years that they truly are out of touch with the Republic of South Africa, out of touch with what it means to be South African. And to me, that's the sad part of it, is that communication went through some kind of a committee or some kind of a sign-off. And when somebody signed it up and looked at it, at face value, somebody said, this is right. This speaks to South Africa. So irrespective and despite the challenges that or the problems that you may see were caused by either EFF, ANC, Action SA, anybody else, despite all those, the last thing that you expect of any party is to associate that flag with one party, because to them it says the flag belongs to South Africa, to the ANC. Let's destroy it. I mean, that's what it leads to a simple mind.
Mm-hmm. If the one of the key issues would be, in communicating a piece of brand communication is to be top of mind. I mean, has the ANC, has the DA? Let me rephrase. Has the DA not succeeded in doing just that? I mean, they're number one talkability in the country today.
They have succeeded in demonstrating that they are out of touch with South Africa, that they have no respect for the symbol that unites South Africans. They've succeeded in desecrating the one thing we should be celebrating 30 years into the new democratic South Africa.
Mm-hmm. So if you had to look at that piece of communication critically, you would look at it, unemotionally this is, although it's an emotional form of communication anyway, right? To say, is there anything in that advert that would convince you to say, I should give this party an opportunity? Perhaps they have a point. For someone who doesn't look at the high level of sophistication of what a flag really means in terms of symbols of a country's destruction, nothing of that sort, simply in terms of giving a message, would it not be convincing?
No, not at all. At zero. I mean, let's think about it. 2010, during the World Cup, what was the singular symbol that represented South Africa? Was the flag of South Africa. 1994, what was the singular flag symbol? The flag of South Africa. It didn't speak to DA, didn't speak to ANC, didn't speak to EFF. I don't think any part of that communication convinces me. Perhaps they should have removed that. I mean, I'll still, of course, struggle with the language that most political parties use, rescue South Africa. Some of the language that is being used is, the question is, to appeal emotively to a electorate, to a potential voter, you need to give them something more that they find of value. So let's say, for example, the EFF and the vote EFF for land and nationalization. So if you are somebody who says, I've been out of land for 30 years or for 400 years, so there is something of value I can vote for. If you are the ANC, for example, you've said, vote together we can do more, and the more that you want is more SASA or more access to opportunities you didn't have. I guess that's an emotive thing that you can relate to. What you cannot relate to a visual representation of your country being burned down. In many other countries, this is illegal, and this is sacrilegious, and you'd be in jail in America.
Okay, last thing, we've got 30 seconds around this one. Yeah, I put a question to the DA spokesperson to say, who produced the advert, which agency, and he said it was done in-house. Does that surprise you?
Well, it doesn't matter really who made the ad. What matters is who signed off the ad and looked at it and said, this is a piece of communication that represents the best of us, and this represents what South Africa should strive for, the destruction of a country.
And that's where we're going to leave it. Tebe Kalafang, much appreciated, and I'm pretty sure we'll have more brand communication talk around the elections in the coming weeks. Thank you for your time. Lots to consider from that, I'll tell you what. From those two conversations, the legal and the brand leadership branding expert. What do you make of that? 0614 104 107. Keep those calls coming. 086 000 2032 to call in. And the first number was via WhatsApp. Let's get the news headlines now. It's 5:30 with Mudupi.
Good afternoon, I'm Greg House with your news headlines. Emergency services from across the Western Cape are on their way to George to assist in the rescue of trapped workers following the collapse of a building under construction. The Judicial Service Commission has decided not to accept the recommendations of the JCC to refer 4 complaints against the Gauteng Judge President for investigation by a tribunal. And police in India have seized 15 tons of what they say is contaminated spice blends from factories. I'm Greg House and I'll have your news at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
What appears to be a fatal collision, possibly involving a road worker in that sinkhole construction area just north of Olifantsfontein. So if you're on your way to Pretoria, big backlogs from Engine, and if you're driving to the airport, having left Pretoria, bigger backlogs than normal, I guess, due to the onlooking factor on the southbound side as well. Just south of Pinetown, outside Durban, a truck, in fact, has overturned Hans Detman on ramp to the M7 as you want to sort of pick the M7 up and go east down towards Queensborough, Bluff direction. So a little bit of disruption likely there. N3 inbound is fairly heavy today from Pavilion Mall, moving in towards Spaghetti Junction, and the Esplanade heading out of Durban, tracking still some quite heavy backlogs out towards the Southern Freeway. Cape Town today, highway's not too bad. A little bit of traffic on the Nelson Mandela Boulevard out to Hospital Bend. Once you get past the bend, it eases up quite nicely. And there is a vehicle burning on Viking Way and Holt Road. So if you're leaving Epping out towards Elsie's and Parow, just watch for some slow-moving traffic along that section of Viking Way. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Kapele.
Right, Jimmy, we're talking tennis.
We're talking all things tennis. Rafa Nadal was drawn today with a qualifier in the first round of the Italian Open as he continues his comeback from injury on clay in Rome. Should Nadal go through to the second round in the Italian capital, where he has won the title a record 10 times, he could face Hubert Hurkacz. Also on Nadal's side of the draw are last year's winners, world number 4 Daniil Medvedev and the beaten finalist Holger Rune. In football, captain Virgil van Dijk says that he loves Liverpool and wants to be part of the club's transition after the departure of manager Jurgen Klopp. Now, Klopp will leave after 9 years at Anfield at the end of the season, with a deal agreed for Feyenoord's boss to replace him. Now, Van Dijk's contract runs out at the end of the 2024-25 season, leading to some speculation that the Netherlands centre-back could leave the club. However, he says he wants to stay put, and the Reds are third in the Premier League table, 4 points behind Manchester City and 5 behind Arsenal with 2 games left. Meanwhile, a referee will wear a video camera for the first time in a Premier League game during this evening's match between Crystal Palace and Manchester United. Jared Gillett will use a head-mounted device called RefCam, although the footage will not be broadcast live, and the video will be used in a one-off program providing insight into officiating in the Premier League. In rugby, table toppers Glasgow Warriors are coming to South Africa full of confidence that they can score 2 wins in the Highveld and up their chances of keeping their spot at the summit of the United Rugby Championship block. 2 weeks ago, they handily beat Zebre 49 in Palmer and leapfrog Leinster, and now they face one of the toughest tests when they head to Loftus Versfeld to face the Bulls at altitude, with the home side intent on grabbing a home victory to get themselves a fine chance of being in the top 2 at the end of the regulation play. Then finally, in cricket, India will be counting on Ravindra Jadeja, all-round brilliance in the T20 World Cup in June. The 35-year-old is India's premier spin bowler all-rounder and will be expected to play a key role in the T20 showpiece and United States and West Indies, where the ball is likely to turn. Against Punjab in the IPL, Jadeja top scored for Chennai with a breezy 43 and then returned to claim 3 for 20 to help the defending champions climb to third place after their 6th win in 11 matches. On that note, it is a wrap from my side.
Did you see, I don't know if you did, the comments from Dean Elgar, the former South African captain. So maybe we must talk about it tomorrow, because I mean, he's, of course, former captain, now playing in England, right?
Yep.
Essex, I think it is. And he said, like, being the captain of the cricket team is like being a captain and a politician all in one go. It's an interesting, I can't remember all the words. Let's dig it up and talk about it tomorrow.
Okay.
Very, very interesting indeed.
We'll do that. With that said, it is a wrap from my side for SAFM Sport. I'm Duming Kapele. Mudimudio.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, let's, in fact, we're going to chat about load shedding. What is load shedding? Do you remember what load shedding is? It's not going to come back, isn't it? Well, we're going to talk about that with Chris Allen later on, because it's still, I mean, the days are counting. You help me with how many days now have you been counting that we do not have load shedding at all? In the meantime, let's, as we do every time around this time, we're going to get to the markets now. Jimmy, you with us, yeah?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I, for one, am looking forward to not having the PTSD of load shedding.
And by the way, just to tell you, I enjoyed the conversation you had today about another type of energy called Shell. But that's this morning, another conversation indeed. Yeah.
Yes, and that's a conversation I'm continuing this evening on the show. So Shell has opted or is potentially weighing up the options of disinvesting from South Africa, from the downstream business that they are involved in. They've been here for 122 years. It's quite a significant move, and the BEE partner in question there is Tebe Investments, which of course is majority owned by the Batho Trust in South Africa. So very significant developments happening there from Shell's perspective, and we're going to dig into that. I've got a conversation with the CEO of the Black Business Council, Hanki Matabane, around that and just understanding what's happening there, because alongside that Shell development over the weekend, this morning we've got another development saying that BNP Paribas, which is a French bank, is also disinvesting out of South Africa. So it seems like there could potentially be a pattern here. We're trying to see what's happening, but we're going to dig into that and try and unpack what's going on there and what it means for the jobs that are at risk and the investments that are at risk. Shell does operate more than 600 outlets in South Africa, so that's quite a significant investment from that perspective. Then we've got a conversation with the Dube Trade Port around their Trade Zone 2, their Phase 2 that they're going live with there in KZN. They've got investments there to the tune of just shy of 2 billion rand. We're going to see where those investments are going to go, what we can expect from Phase 2 and how successful Phase 1 was. And then we've got a conversation with Redefine around their results. They reported their half-year results for the 6 months ended February 2024. So we're going to speak to their Chief Financial Officer and try and unpack what's been happening with the business, what they can expect for the next 6 months, and just how they view the South African situation, given that almost 70% of their portfolio sits in South Africa. And then because it's Monday, we've got a personal finance segment, and we're taking a look at the realities of black tax in South Africa. And that is not black tax in the cultural context, but in the generational context. It's just having to look after your parents, having to look after those around you and those in your life. We had a conversation around planning for multi-generational living last week, and so we're taking that a bit further to say, from a financial planning point of view, how do we get ready for this, and how do you understand the realities that you have to contend with as a breadwinner? I'm sure many people have these realities and challenges that they face on a daily basis. So we're going to look at that and see how we can help from a financial perspective and from a personal finance point of view. But before we get to that, we're going to do a quick summary of the markets. They've been moving in positive territory for once, and we're going to relish in that. Henko Krier is going to join me in a second to just give us a summary of what's been happening with those markets. Good afternoon, Henko. Thanks as always for keeping an eye on the markets. The Rand still holding below 18 Rand 50. At some stage I saw it below 18 Rand 40, and I got a little too excited. We're now back at about 18.46. What's been happening?
Yes, hello Jimmy. Good evening to Ashraf and to me, and good evening to all the listeners. Yes, but overall it was a green day worldwide, because in the US the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq trading about 0.7% up, and the Dow Jones is 0.2% stronger. Similarly, in Europe, with European stocks, the DAX and the CAC 40 each gained 0.5% today, and also the JSE, which finished 0.5% stronger today, and that was at a level of 76,776 points. Then the industrial index finished unchanged, didn't move up or down today, but the resources index came back strong today, 1.9, almost 2% up at the end of the day, and the financial index gained 0.2%. It was a rather good day for Glencore, which finished 2.1% stronger, and Standard Bank finishing 1.6% up, and there was also Prosus, which gained 1% today, but Anglo lost 1%, and other companies that gave poorer performances and finished lower today were Alphaman, Redefine, and Spar. Alphaman, for example, lost 4.1%. Redefine finished 3.2% weaker. Spar lost 1.5%. And Supergroup, Vodacom, as well as Shoprite each lost 1% today. But then back to the good news. Montauk Renewable Energy gained 6%. There was also Sibanye Stillwater today 5.5% stronger. Anglo Gold finished 4.5% up, and Harmony, Implats, as well as ARM each gained 4% today. There's also Sasol, which finished today 3.5% stronger. On the commodities market, the price of gold is $2,320 an ounce. Silver is trading at $27.20. Platinum, $955. And palladium, $978. The price of Brent crude is currently $83.30 a barrel. And yes, like you mentioned, the rand looking up today. It was quite strong earlier this afternoon, now falling back a little bit, but not by much. Currently trading at 18 rand 43 to the US dollar. Then 23 rand 17 to the pound, 19 rand 87 to the euro, and 12 rand 20 to the Australian dollar. And the Bitcoin is trading at $63,000, and that is 1,210,000 rand. And Jimmy, that's how the markets performed today.
Thank you very much for that update, Henku. I'm going to be digging into some of these market movements in a little while with Makwe Masilela of Makwe Fund Managers just after 6. We've got quite a lot to talk about. I think the resource counters might be in for a bit of a rally before we head into elections, but it's going to definitely be one of the most interesting Mays that we've seen in South African history given this election year. We'll dig into these and other stories when we come back a little later. For now, Ashraf, back to you and the team.
Thanks for that, Jimmy. Enjoy your show coming up after 6. Right, let's get to callers now. In fact, depending on time, we're going to talk about the issue of load shedding or the absence of load shedding with Chris Yellen pretty shortly. Lots of comment and commentary on the DA advert issue. Nsikana from Durban, hello.
Good evening, Ashraf. Welcome back. I just want to relate a short story about the flag issue.
Go ahead. Well, thanks for the welcome back. Firstly, much appreciated. Right, go ahead with the flag.
Yes, thank you, Ashraf. Some time back, when Meles Zenawi, the late Ethiopian Prime Minister, was still a rebel leader, it looked that his people used to carry foodstuff, wheat, or whatever they're eating, using the national flag. Now, the government of the time wanted to use this to discredit Meles Zenawi, and they worked on their media to arrange an interview with him, and eventually this was done. And amongst the questions they posed to Meles Zenawi during the interview, they said, we understand you people use the national flag to carry foodstuffs. And Meles Zenawi said, yes, we do. And they said, why do you do that? And he said, it's a piece of cloth.
Okay.
You see, Ashraf, the main thing, I don't doubt that a flag is a national symbol. A flag is a national symbol, but you require people with critical thinking skills to come to a flag from different perspectives to identify what it is from different perspectives, but at its core, it's a piece of cloth, Ashraf. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Well, I don't know if I agree with you that at its core it's a piece of cloth, because otherwise it'll still be called a piece of cloth. I think at its core it is a flag that represents and depicts in graphic image all the things that represents our country. That's the reason that I wave a flag. That's the reason that we wave it when we win events. That's the reason we wave it when there's a new president elected at inauguration. That's the reason when I often wear, either a metal badge or even these flag socks at important events when I MC them, because it tells me I represent my country. So I don't think it's just a piece of cloth. But your point is taken, Tsikana, and again, thanks for the welcome back. Right, Daniel, also in Durban. Hello.
Hi, Ashraf. Thank you for taking my call.
Appreciate it.
My comment will be, I think as individuals see that advert or that DA symbol, how they perceive it, because you always see a picture before you put it in practice. So basically, it represents the country South Africa. And I think people out there randomly, if you walk around, you ask what's going on, they will tell you something. So basically now in election time, right, you will get something like that as long as it's not violating anyone's human rights. That is my comment.
So you think it's a good piece of communication?
Well, you must remember we are in the season now of election, right? That's one. And everybody will try to win the other. But what I see, the flag represents South Africa. And we need to ask ourselves, what is happening in South Africa?
So the advert depicts that accurately for you.
Well, from my perspective, I think that is what the DA is trying to say. I'm not a DA supporter, but I'm just saying it from the point of what is happening right now.
Thank you. Well, I mean, that's
talking.
what we want. Thanks for that, Daniel. It certainly it gives us an idea of what people are thinking. And as you've heard, thanks for that, right? Different people see differently, and it certainly helps us. Here's another one, a voice note. Any PR? Good PR? Okay.
Hi, Ashraf. I haven't seen the advert, but as they say, any PR is good PR. And one thing's for certain, and you're a testament to that, as you've been knocking around or bashing away at this thing for the last half an hour, is the DA have put themselves top of mind or top of the media at the moment. Thanks, Mike in Kabaha.
Okay, Mike, well, they certainly are top of mind, and you're quite right. We've responded on this show because the show is called The National Pulse. We respond to issues that has a feel for the National Pulse, and this is one of them. Whether top of the mind then converts into top of the vote, Mike, I don't know. I'm not the campaigner, but that's the big question, isn't it? Here's another.
Ashraf, what the DA did, it can make them be top of the news. But to many Africans, they will be in top of the news for wrong reasons, which is a bad publicity. But to their real members and people who understand the cause and values of the DA, they have projected a very good state of South Africa being destroyed. So some others will understand, some will definitely not. And to burn a flag, it was according to them, it was a clear indication of what is happening to our country and state. But to many people, it's very personal because it's like when you say in America we'll burn a White House, it's that kind of personal to other people here. Thanks, man. Nice show.
Much appreciated. Thank you. And thanks for listening. Okay, really appreciate it. But burning a White House means burning a White House, isn't it? Okay, here's another.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and your team. Flores here from the Western Cape. Ashraf, it's a matter of desperate times, call for desperate measures. And I think parties are really getting desperate, and they will do whatever it takes to wow in prospected people to vote for them. We have seen in the past where T-sets have parties with presidents and it gets burned. Okay, we cannot put these two together, but like I said, I don't think the DA is doing itself any favors by having that ad. Anyways, have a good bye-bye.
There we are, nice. And of course, not everybody agrees with me on the show, and that's just the way it is.
Ashraf, I really, really like you, but I don't think this is a topic that you should be talking about on the radio, because you are totally one-sided, and I think you should drop this topic for your own personal opinions, because I don't think it's fair that you have this topic on your radio your time slot, because you're not going to hear the other side at all because of your religious beliefs, and I think it's totally unfair. So I don't think it was in good taste for you to have this topic on your program today. Thank you very much.
Well, there you are. I mean, if that's the case, then it means we can't talk about anything because we all have opinions about just about everything. But professionally, we have a job to do. Just to go back to what I think you're talking about, that you've decided I shouldn't. You've decided that. What I think we should be talking about is not so much the opinions of the speaker or myself, but that the speaker who I was speaking to was moving away from the topic. And that really is the issue. Anyway, we're fine with a variety of opinions, okay? Let's talk about the other topic that I have an absolute interest in, which is called load shedding.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, so let's talk about load shedding, or the sheer absence of load shedding, and how are we coping around that. Chris Yellen, who's an energy expert, is with us as always. Thanks for your time, Chris.
Good evening to you and your listeners.
Goodness, the longer we have no load shedding, the more we need to talk to you. That sounds so confusing, isn't it?
Yeah, when there's load shedding, they talk to me. When there's no load shedding, they want to talk to me.
All right. Now, we're talking to you because, amazingly, load shedding or the absence thereof continues. Now, when we last spoke, I think you made the point that it's the absence of, part is better maintenance, but also the absence of a greater demand because more people are off the grid, right? And we did not include the issue of sinister political motives behind the absence of load shedding. You have a different take on that today? I mean, the electricity minister, Dr. Ramokgopa, certainly spoke about it today.
No, I tend to agree with him. I don't believe that there are sinister conspiracies at play that are trying to improperly influence the outcome of the election by manipulating data and manipulating, the use of diesel and the various techniques that it can use, in the levers that they pull to mitigate load shedding. So I do want to say that I think that's nonsense by people that know very little about electricity. But they're very quick to talk about these conspiracies without any underlying data to support these ideas.
But let's stay with that for the moment, because for most people, that's like the single biggest issue. You see, how can something that is so impossible become possible like a few weeks later, and the sustained impossibility of no load shedding become the absolute norm? So I hear what you're saying, and therefore people have conspiracy theories. Now convince us why we shouldn't have conspiracy theories with the numbers, so that those of us who just say it's the ruling party, they be convinced otherwise.
Well, look, let's also be clear. Having said that, I don't think there's a conspiracy that is out to improperly influence the election. The other side of it is that, for about a year, more than a year now, government has really focused on this problem. And it's focused on it because it has become a political issue, and that the balance of power in politics is becoming a little bit more balanced now. And that government is in a position where it can be held to account. If one's electoral support is so dominant that politicians really are under no pressure to improve, that's not a good thing. Now that things are perhaps moving towards somewhat more balance, politicians really need to obsess about these things because it has become a very real political issue, and that is good. It is democracy at work. It is holding politicians to account, and it is forcing them to give and take this matter really seriously for a change. Remember, for the last 10 years, government, I don't think, really took this matter seriously. But recently, in the last year, it has just had to take it seriously because it could actually impact the outcome of elections. And that's democracy at work. So I really, and that's not a conspiracy. That's not manipulating. That is doing what really needs to be done to attend to the problem. And let's be honest, this problem can be solved. It should be solved, and it must be solved. There are only a small handful, maybe you can count them on one hand, of countries in the whole world that have load shedding for 8 or 10 hours a day for 6 months. And we should not be one of those countries.
Yeah,
it is a failure if we are one of those countries.
Yeah. So I just want to stay with these 2 points that the minister, the electricity minister, said. That it's largely due. Then it's the absence of load shedding. So it's like 40 days now, right? Largely due to Eskom's performance in generating electricity, which is, I think, the key one there, right? And I mean, do you think that he's got, is that a point that's convincing for you, and you've got numbers to say yes?
Not entirely convincing. In fact, look, there has been one significant development that has made an impact, and that is the bringing back to service of Kusile units number 1, 2, and 3 on a temporary basis while they attend to the real underlying problem, which is the flue gas desulfurization plant that was causing a lot of problems before, the failure, and ultimately led to the failure of the flue ducting to the smokestack. So they have now bypassed that troublesome plant, and the plant is now operating much better, and the units are brought to service, and they're running nicely. But really, it does beg the question. You see, this is just a temporary measure. Those flue gas desulfurization plants have to be put back into service. Towards the end of this year and the beginning of next year, there will be outages again at these 3 units while they put in place the permanent solution. And the question is, once they put this troublesome flue gas desulfurization plant back into service, will things go back to a time when they were really unreliable and they were breaking down all the time, and finally they broke down for more than a year? So the real underlying issue has, for the time being, been bypassed. And the question is, are they going to sort this problem out? And I asked this question today of the minister, and I was told, and the head of Eric Shumagun from Eskom Generation said that they are working on it, and they are reasonably optimistic that they can actually attend to the underlying problem. And I hope they're right.
Well,
for goodness sake, let's hope they're right.
We hope they're right too. Let's leave it at that, Chris. We'll talk soon, hopefully when it's day 400 without load shedding. Thanks for your time, Chris Yellen. Absolutely. Being optimistic about things, okay? I don't know the article. Here's some comments. I've seen Eskom will only implement stage 2 during winter. Does anybody have information about it, Terence? I think that's what the minister had suggested, okay? We'll see about that one. Then Brian Mabai saying, good evening. I like the fact that you also play voice notes. They don't agree with you. And that's what I like about SAFM and the level of respect and accountability of your job. You're not biased at your job. Thank you, Brian. Well, I'm fine with that, Brian. We have different opinions, absolutely. And we must be respectful about the fact that I'd rather talk than not talk, absolutely. Joe in Weinberg has a comment. Hi, Joe.
Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, good. You got about 30 seconds, right? Go ahead.
Okay, let's do it. You talk about genocide in the Middle East. Who is it being done by? It's being done by Hamas, who is using the Palestinian citizens as a shield, and it's disgusting. Now, that's the closest thing. If Israel had wanted to do genocide, I can't imagine that, but if they had, it would have been done.
Okay, got that, Joe? See, right. Some may argue the point, 30, 40,000 people dead is effectively just that. Let's see if I can pick up another couple of voice notes on the issue. Maybe we'll just set it up on that side. We've lost maybe one or two. I think we'll play it on that side.
Hi, Ashraf. I personally don't see anything wrong with the DA and the flag. If we think national flag means something, and then any damage to it, it's supposed to make us feel bad. What is worse than the Zamazamas and the gangsters that are yielding high weapon machinery, terrorizing the citizens, and then taking key points like your diamond, your gold, and everything else? For me, really, it's just a piece of cloth, which means nothing. If at all it meant anything else, then government would have declared state of emergency on these Zamazamas that have taken the whole country at ransom. For me, it's just a piece of cloth. It means nothing. This is Libitza Bloemfontein.
Okay, well, if it means nothing, then also the DA's message to you won't mean nothing to you, meaning that it will not even affect you. So they would not have succeeded in that as well. So for me, the flag means something. For you, it means nothing. In both cases, if that's the case, then the DA would not have succeeded on that issue, isn't it? Something to consider. But here's the one thought. So it certainly means a lot to me symbolically, okay? But here's the one thing, and I agree with you on this point, or with anybody, that the flag is a powerful symbol, but if the flag doesn't give you food on the table, then that's something that you want to strive for. And that is really what all the political parties need to strive for. And therefore, my point that I brought up at the beginning of the show, and you can listen to it as part of the That's My Point feature, that it's about time all the parties, every single one of the political parties, understand that their role ultimately is they need to serve. They need to be servant leaders. The question is, who are they serving? I'll leave you with that. This is the National Pulse. We'll do it again tomorrow. Great chatting with you and engaging with you all throughout the show. It's 6 o'clock. Let's get the news now with Greg.
Thank you, Ashraf. In this news update, rescue operation at collapsed George building and JSC will not act on Mlambo complaints. Good evening. Emergency services from across the Western Cape are on their way to George to assist in the rescue of trapped workers following the collapse of a building under construction. The George Mayor, Leon van Wyk, who's on the scene, says many workers have already been rescued, with dozens more believed to be